used a lot of it to then kind of make a nice documentary film piece together. So I was starting to then do a little bit of film footage out in the field, getting a lot of interviews with athletes, and just sort of collating something together, which was sort of really deep ingrained in me, which was the adventure sports. Funny enough, the thing that then happened was, I was kind of deep into the world of adventure racing. I kind of got the bug as well, because I saw everyone having a great time, and then I thought, well, what these guys are doing, I also want to be doing. So that kind of got me to sign up for a lot of these adventure races and sport events and ultra running. The reason why I put it up here, because it kind of goes into the next steps, which I'm going to talk about next. But so I've done, these two. This is a race I did in China, ran 250 kilometers through the desert. The one on the left, I did a race in Patagonia about a year ago, this time last year. I've done Spartan races and things like that. That's kind of where my hobby is and passion is. And naturally, what I then found is that a lot of work I tend to do kind of continues from there. I want to then talk about kind of the adventure photography. Because what I've found is, I had traveled a fair bit around the world doing adventure sports. I love the sports myself. You kind of understand kind of the content of it. You kind of understand what's good visuals. So when Adventure HQ opened up here a few years ago, they purchased a lot of my stock imagery. So they kind of, I think the first one in Times Square, and probably half all the big visuals on the wall, they're kind of all photographs they bought for me and kind of went on the wall, which is really nice. And then I think about 3 years ago, they had a couple management change. There was a new marketing manager come in and said, well, I would love to shoot a full catalog of what Adventure HQ means here in the region. And he said, great, that's exactly what we need. And I said, well, what do you need then? Well, we need trail running, cycling, fat biking, fishing, rock climbing. Gosh, what else do we have? Camping, triathlons, and that list went on and on and on. I thought, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be a 10, 15-day photo shoot. So I said, so, how does it work budget-wise? Because the thing is, there's a lot of sports we're talking about. It's, we're talking 10, 15 days. And they said, no. We got to shoot it all in 2 days. I said, well, that's never going to happen. So we went back and forth, and we kind of settled on 5 days, trying to build an image library that explains adventure sports and explains what Adventure HQ means, and at the same time also promotes what kind of the region has to offer. So before we go into a lot of the individual photographs, I've got a nice short behind-the-scenes video, which is kind of a nice summary of what went on the photo shoots, which in theory should work.
So I would see photography as a great outlet to go out and really capture a lot of stories. It's a great way to get in the outdoors. It's a great way to work with athletes. Being inspired by the moment itself, getting people to do what they love doing, and then just shoot around it.
Days run, nights fall away. Streetlights guide me. They show me the way. Oh, oh, oh. Take my hand, I'll lead you home. Escape our fate and walk alone. Turn down the lights tonight, moon's our guide. We dance, we sing, we live.
That was one of the coolest gigs I think I've done. You can kind of see the energy, you can see, I guess, the intensity, and everyone's kind of having a great time on set. I think that's most of the photo shoots to do, so I think that's always very important when you kind of work with a team, that it kind of all works together. So I've got 5 images from that particular photo shoot I want to go through. And I think, I've not been for a while, but when you go to the Adventure HQ in Abu Dhabi, in Yas Mall, I think all the images on the wall is kind of what came out of that photo shoot. So it was quite a big collection we shot in just 5 days. So I want to talk briefly through the photographs, and then kind of, if there's any questions from you guys, how I photographed it, please feel free. I start what I call relatively easy, and then I kind of build it up as the images progress, whereby they potentially might get more complicated. So for me, this is kind of a relatively easy photo to get. You kind of work with professional athletes, the guy in the middle. I think he's worked with at least 1 or 2 who kind of understand the sport better than I do. So you kind of collaborate with them and say, well, this is kind of the vision I have, is this kind of photograph. And they start a little bit further out in sea. It's early morning, so you can see this beautiful, nice warm light coming from the land. And these guys just come full speed straight towards the camera. On this one, I probably would have been shooting on a 400 telephoto lens. So obviously, that helps to kind of have a bit of distance. And it's shot relatively easy. There's a nice fast shutter speed, nice, low aperture, lots of blur in the background. And then with the fast shutter speed, you see that you can kind of freeze all the water and get a really nice crisp photo. Obviously, the challenging bit is with pedaling, is that they're not blocking the pedals in front of their own faces and things like that. So that's a bit of luck. So obviously, when I briefed the guys, I said, well, we need to kind of keep with the same stroke. So everyone does it at the same time, then most likely we get a shot that works. So the good thing about digital photography, we try it once, we look at the back of the camera, and then we make some adjustments, and probably in 3-4 rounds, we kind of freeze a photo like this. Then it went blank. Then we photograph this. There we go. What happens when I do this? There we go. Yeah. There we go. Found it. So this is a second image I wanted to put in. And we did this in September. Everyone knows what kind of temperature we have in September, right? It's still pretty warm. And this we photographed up in Musandam. So we actually got a boat. We threw as much stuff as we could in a speedboat. We went to one of the villages up in the peninsula. And then we created a whole kind of story around water sports. And I've got different photographs from the stand-up paddleboarding, and the most common one would be someone standing on a board and paddleboarding, which I photographed, and they've used that. But I can remember years ago, I had seen a photo of 2 surfers with normal clothes on, holding a surfboard, standing on the rock face, looking down at the bay. And I thought it's actually a really interesting way of storytelling, water sports and stand-up paddleboarding or surfing, whereby, partly is about the action sport, but partly is also about, what's happening in a photograph. So when it comes to storytelling, I think there's a lot of content in here, whereby, have they just finished? Are they still starting? Have they just been up in the water, or is there something more behind us? And then from an Adventure HQ point of view, obviously there's a lot of branding in there, which kind of fits from the products they're selling. So so I kind of set it up. And then how I would normally shoot this, we would start a little bit, a few walks lower, and then these guys just walk up. So I kind of give them an area, and I said, well, this is what we're going to do. This is the photo I have in mind. And then, I know it's still 45 degrees, but please go and put on the long trousers and a nice warm jumper and put on a woolen hat, because that kind of looks cool and it kind of fits with the photo. So in order to ask a lot for athletes or for talent is I always find it really easy to connect with them, because I've done a lot of sports myself. So we're on the same boat. So I think that kind of camaraderie and teamwork really works. So, it's warm, but we're still doing it together. So I think that's something that really, really pays off, is you've got a good collaboration with the talent. So this is a shot we did, kind of a hero shot around cycling and triathlons. And what you probably noticed here is this is shot up towards Al Qudra Road. I photographed, I think one of the key things I kind of like about this photograph, well, you can't really see it on this screen, but there's a lot of sharpness in the key person here. There's a bit of blur here, but it's fine. She's kind of really sharp, even when you kind of zoom in on the computer. But when you look at the street here, when you look at the feet, and then particularly when you look at the wheels, there's a nice bit of motion. And you know, it's so much easier just to go for a very fast shutter speed. You freeze it, then it's kind of, it's not in place, it's not in sync. And you probably find with a lot of photographs we're going to talk about is trying to make it look as real as possible, kind of in a setting that we are. So how we photographed this, I was nice and comfortable sitting in the back of a car. Someone else was driving. And then I just, you know, obviously I knew the area would work and kind of the road and everything. We kind of, cars driving, I'm sitting in the back and I'm shooting at a slightly slower shutter speed. I don't know what particularly, probably about 1/40th, 1/60th of a second, which is hard to get handheld, let alone bouncing on the back of a car and everything. So the key secret to this is that everyone needs to move at the same speed. So you kind of want, which is hard because the cyclists, you know, they have a certain speed to go to. As long as the two of them go at the same speed, and then the car kind of needs to mirror that same speed. So it takes a bit of practice. And I'm going to talk about some car photography later on, and we do exactly the same things. Just kind of mirroring their speed with my speed, and then shoot at a slightly slower shutter speed. The one thing I do, because it's a risky one, right? Because I might take 100 photos and none of them work, whereby the sharpness is just right. So I kind of bracket it. So I'm on speed priority. Maybe start at a 40th of a second. I go to a 60th of a second. I bring it up really fast just to make sure I've got some photos that are really sharp, and then I bring it back down again. So kind of in that journey whereby we probably start from here, and then, you know, maybe we drive 2-3 minutes. You know, there'd be a lot of photographs in there whereby to eliminate the risk of not getting any photos, some of them are shot at a faster shutter speed, and some of them shot at a slower shutter speed. And then eventually, you know, you kind of get that movement, which I, you know, I personally really like. Any questions? Yeah, please. Previous shot. So I think this one was shot on a 24-70, quite wide, on a full frame camera. So this, I don't know, 1DX or the 1DX Mark II. I can't remember how long ago it was. Whatever was at the latest at that stage. It's just quite a wide one. And then this one definitely on a 24-70. Because you can see it because it's quite wide. When we're going to look at some of the car shots, because they need to be quite close to the car. So obviously she's a professional athlete, and he's the main guy at Adventure HQ that sells bikes. So they're experienced cyclists. If after feeling that these guys are not very experienced cyclists, you know, the last thing I want is me to be in a car, someone driving kind of slightly in the middle of the road, and then have cyclists behind me too close who don't know what they're doing. So then I probably might go for a longer lens just to sort of keep them further away. But I kind of love that wideness because that shows so much more of the surroundings that we're in. Similar cycling shot. And this is on top of Jebel Jais in Ras Al Khaimah. And there's an interesting story here. So I kind of recce this particular corner, and I've photographed this corner a few times. I kind of like it. And depending on what time of the year it is, but normally sun's around about 5:30, 5, 6 o'clock, depending what time of the year. So I knew exactly when I recce'd it 1 week before what time the sun was going to come over the mountain. And then I kind of envision a shot whereby we're going to get some cyclists coming around, all on BMC bikes, which is one of the brands they're selling. And for me, it was kind of about the energy in a hard climb. So again, I photographed this from the back of a car. I kind of knew if I'm going to be shooting into the light, that obviously, you know, silhouette backlit is going to be an issue. So there's an assistant sitting in front, hanging out of a window with a battery-powered studio light. So he's throwing in a bit of fill-in light to sort of cover the main two guys in the front. And then I said the same thing. So we're kind of coming around the corner. So all the other people are standing behind here. And then, you know, to get this, you probably have about 5 minutes. If you're a little bit earlier, the sun's still on the bottom. If you're a little bit later, it's all gone. So, so what you do, what I'd normally do when I get there, we would do a couple of dry runs before the sun's up. So everyone kind of knows what's happening. The driver knows what he's doing. Again, we're kind of driving against traffic. We've got someone scouting the road, so we're kind of making sure that we're not going to get any accidents. And then again, you know, these guys need to be at a certain speed whereby the intensity looks real. You know, he's out on his pedals, you know, some real muscle work going on. So the driver needs to get used to their speed. And I can do 1 practice one, 2 practice ones. But if I do 20 practice ones, by the time I'm going to be ready, these guys are going to be tired. So you kind of got to balance the timing whereby you feel it's going to totally work. And there's an interesting story with this shot, because I kind of knew the one before that it was going to happen in the next round. That something's going to be just perfect. So we all gear up, everything's ready. And I jump in the back of the car, the tailgate's open. And in my excitement, I kind of jump in the car and I kind of knocked the back of my head, which happens all the time. But as I sort of jumped in the car, I also brought the camera forward. So as I jumped in, I kind of smacked my face on the camera, which can happen, right? But then when I'm kind of taking the photograph, I can feel this little stream of cold blood coming down because it was quite a bit of a nasty cut. And then I thought, this is such a nice photo. We're not going to stop and kind of, look at the first aid kit. So I get the photograph. I kind of feel it, doing this. So I'll find my way about it later. And we get to the top, and then everyone's all happy, and we got a photo. And then my assistant, he turns around, and I pull my camera down. I'm kind of partly covered in blood. He just kind of got a heart attack. So, but the things you do for a good photograph, I think. Yeah. So that's on top of. Any questions about this one? This is, I think, a shot we did on top of the mountains. Sorry, question? Sorry.
Can I ask about the aperture in this? Like 16, 18?
Oh, not so high, I think, because obviously it's still quite dark. So what's the aperture? The aperture will be partly determined by the flash output. So obviously, there's a studio light that's throwing flash out. So probably somewhere between 5.6 f9, I think, something like that. So the flash would be at the lowest, because obviously the last thing I want is just like this massive flow of white light, because that kind of kills it.
Got the starburst to the sun.
How come this?
Yeah. How you got the starburst in the middle?
That's just naturally how it happens as you photograph it. So we kind of just went up and then. Because you start up lower, and then the car drives up, and eventually it sort of comes over the mountains, and then you kind of get it. So this I'll probably shoot at a burst of 20 photos or something like that, kind of knowing when it's going to come, and then sort of, you probably see a lot of the other photographs as well. That I love to work against the light. Just gives a lot of raw drama, whatever you want to call it, kind of thing. So. So this is kind of a nice summary shot of what Adventure HQ is. This is something I would sometimes set up on a tripod. I think in this case I had it handheld. And, it's a thin line between having everything look very staged and unreal to letting it totally happen and then you have no control. So obviously the things I did set up was the tent I set up, the barbecue I set up, the car, just enough branding in here that anyone kind of knows what kind of brand we're talking about. And then the guys in the background kind of getting it all up, and then it's just allowing the moment to happen. So, I know I've got my framing, I know the light kind of works, it's early morning light, and then I'll just let the guys have fun. And I think when you have that connection with the talent or the athletes, it's so important that they just feel free to kind of have a play. And I've kind of sussed out of all the people we got to work with, who were the funny ones and who were kind of the less funny ones. So, I know he was a great character. We'd get the guys going. So, right, we need a bit of energy on set. And then he's just like, well, what do we do? No, you're in charge now. And he just allow a little bit of chemistry to happen. And some of the shots he's looking back and, he's picking up the pineapple. So I think that's something that only works with a photographer if you kind of connect with your audience. So I think that's something I think is always very important. One of the things I've learned from this set, from this shoot, was so we're up 2 days on a boat, and then we drove into the mountains. So we packed boxes and boxes full of equipment, clothing and everything. And we forgot one crucial piece of equipment from the store. So most of the kit we got had to go back to the store as well. So I see him in the video, this guy rubbing his shorts in dirt, because if you want it to look real, it's got to look dirty, right? So all the stuff I got was all brand new. I said, no, we need to kind of break a bit of dirt in there, which he said, well, it has to go back to the store. I said, well, I'm sure you manage. But the one piece of equipment, if you got, all the clothing has security tags on it. So it's got this big white, security thing on there. we forgot to bring the D tagger, or whatever you want to call it. So pretty much everything that had clothing, I had to Photoshop, you know, the white little thingy coming out here, and then there was some back of the bags and everything. So you can see it in the video. I'm sure if you watch it again, you'll probably see it everywhere. In order photography, I had to take it out, but we forgot to bring the security detagger. So everything had these nice white thingies on there. Before we move into some of the car photography, is there any questions? No? Cool. So I'm going to talk about some of the car photography I've done. As I spoke earlier, you know, I come from a car background. I used to work for Land Rover and Jaguar for the Middle East office for a few years. So I kind of understand car, I understand the storytelling, I understand branding. So for me to go and shoot cars was kind of a natural thing to do. And I think I've been lucky and blessed to have the opportunity to work for a lot of really cool sports car brands. I don't know, that just happened the way it went. So you find a lot of really cool cars in here. So this is the McLaren, shot down towards Ras Al Khaimah. There's a hotel here, the Ritz-Carlton. Used to be another hotel, different name before. And I kind of known this road because it's got some beautiful zigzags, it's got some trees. And when we came here, it was just, you know, a beautiful empty road. And you can see a lot of similarities with the shot with the cyclist, whereby I've done a lot of car-to-car photography. And most of the car photography I do is kind of all car-to-car, kind of gives that energy movement. So the setup is the same. So I'm sitting in the back of one car, sometimes with a harness on, sometimes not. It's better to do with a harness, I think, from a safety point of view. And then tailgate open, or back of whatever car we can put our hands on. And then we kind of just start around the corner, and then we just photograph it. And then, again, this is probably shot 1/20th of a second, 1/40th maybe, somewhere in between. And then, so we're driving exactly the same speed. So these are all professional drivers. So he's a professional driver, Ian, and then the guy I'm in it with as well. So these guys, they would do bumper to bumper at the same speed, high speed, low speed, doesn't matter. These guys know what they're doing. So I feel comfortable kind of hanging out of a car and getting the photograph. So we kind of start a bit further back, and then we just, you know, this is probably still at 60 kilometers an hour. So there's a lot of speed in there just to make it look real. A lot of people say, well, we can do that in Photoshop. I say, I don't know. For me, it's not how I would photograph it. I think when you're in Photoshop, it's hard to get the balance right because, you know, there's lots more movement here in the foreground as there is in the middle, and there's hardly any movement in the back. So in order to do that in Photoshop, you've got to spend a lot of hours retouching it all out. I'd rather just do it in camera. So slow shutter speed priority. Focus is always, for me, on the license plate, because that's kind of the key piece where your eyes would go to. Or sometimes the lights, depending on what car it is. And then our servo, just kind of do the tracking focus. So we start a bit further back. You know, this little red dot is exactly where the car is. And then I just, you know, just hammer through 20 shots as you come through it. And that's, you know, the nice thing of this, the 1DX, you know, there's 14 frames a second or something like that. So you can just, you know, you can just take lots of photos. And eventually there's one in here that works really well. Good question. This would have been the end of the day. If I get my reference right, the sea is there and the mountains are there. So, you know, I kind of come up and come around. So I've got another photograph, I think, coming up, which was shot in the morning up in the mountains. So this was an evening shot, not in the middle of the day, but kind of, you know, because it's got this nice shadow bits, and you still got some rich texture in the sand dunes. This is another shot we did, again, same car-to-car philosophy, up on the Yas Marina circuit in Abu Dhabi. These guys got really nervous on the circuits because they'd never done cars and motorbikes at the same time. So I was doing some work for Lamborghini. I tend to do a lot of work for them, which is really cool. So these are all professional drivers. So, you know, he's, you know, kind of award-winning motor biker, and then we've got some professional drivers in there as well. So this is shot at full speed. And one of the things you'll notice with cars, you can kind of manage because there's so much suspension control, so you're not going to get massive raw on the camera, regardless of what speed you do. So you want to keep it horizontal. But when it comes to bikes, bikes need to move, where you can't hang in slowly because you just fall over. So one of the challenges I had with this was, I need to keep speed going. So fine, we'll just give it a go. So all the movement you see in here, this was all shot in camera. So I've not added any movement or anything in post. So this is about, again, shooting at a slow shutter speed, knowing how I'd love my framing to look. And I photographed in this corner a few times before, but this obviously helps. And then, the lens flare you see coming through, that's kind of just the sun coming through the buildings. So just to sort of give a feel of how it goes in real life, I've got a very short 10-second clip, because inside here is the little GoPro camera filming this guy here, but also sort of got me in the same picture. So I spoke to the camera guy, I said, can I have some of that GoPro footage, because there's a great summary to get a feel of what happens. It's very short, but you get it quite quickly. It might be a bit noisy. So I'm in here. So this is the speed we go around the corner. And I'm sort of counting it back. And by here, that's when the photograph was taken. So if you don't get it, you've got to go all the way around and do it again. So obviously timing is a key thing. And I love this kind of stuff. Right? Any boys loves to hang out of cars. This is a shot we did when they launched the new Audi up in Oman, up in the mountains. So a couple of things I think which work potentially in the photograph here is the speed. This is the Q8. It's all about speed. A lot of my photographs have kind of energy and speed in there. I love the setting, whereby, this is not a dune-bashing Land Cruiser kind of car. So we wanted to get an off-road feel in the mountains without going too extreme. What works here, you can kind of get that distant feel where it's coming from. I also find it important, if we can, to get a bit of a storyline in the photograph. Where's he coming from, where's he going to? And then it was, again, shot with a professional driver. So one of the advantages when you shoot on tarmac, on a high top, you can do car to car. There's no dust. You can't do any car to car on a road like this, because we're going to kick up so much dust. I can't do any photographs. So I'm just sitting on the side of the road, thinking how the photograph would look like, and then kind of frame it, and then kind of track the focus, and kind of know when it's going to be in shot, and shoot at the relatively fast shutter speed that I get sharpness here, but it's not completely frozen, whereby it kind of just looks too static. So there's a bit. Yeah, so the question is an afternoon shot's quite harsh light. What makes it harsh then?
Sun's right over you.
Exactly.
The shadows are really strong.
Yeah. It's a valid point. So was this shot at the perfect time of the day? No, it wasn't. But this was out of a whole day photo shoot that we had to do so many things at the same time. And then at the same time also coordinating with a film crew who needed to do stuff, that we just ended up being here at kind of far from ideal timing. Because if we would have photographed it later, the shadows would have been a bit longer, and we probably would have had a bit more color and contrast in the surroundings. But I think it kind of still works. And we photographed this up on Jebel Akhdar, so this is about 2,000 meters high, so the light's a little bit crisper. But yeah, that's a valid point. Where it was? This is Jebel Akhdar. So Jebel Akhdar is in Oman. So you got Jebel Shams, and then you got Jebel Akhdar, which is one of the other high mountains. I think the second highest mountain, maybe. Please.
Just wanted to ask you, how did you handle the reflections on the glass and the paint of the car with this harsh light? Because I believe you will get some very...
Yeah, I think so the question is...
no reflection here on the glass.
I think there's a bit of luck there. I've photographed enough times whereby, there's light coming back, bouncing back. Yeah. This is not something you plan for in particular. This is kind of knowing that the light would be kind of at the right angle. The only thing you could possibly say is maybe it's a bit harsh here in terms of color, but it's the reflection is just just the right time, the right angle of the car.
It's not any filters, maybe?
No. I generally don't shoot with any filters, so no polarizer filters, which is one option to get some of the glare out of the car, to shoot with a polarizer filter. The only filters I might use with my car-to-car photography is ND filters. Because obviously, if you do end up shooting in the middle of the day, which I spoke about, you want to shoot at whatever it is, 1/40th of a second, your aperture is so high that any bit of dust would just create so much issues that, so I put an ND filter on so I can kind of darken it a bit. I don't know why it's doing like this. So this is, the same morning. So this is the morning shot. Same car. Oh, we had two cars, I can't remember. We had a convertible and we had a hardtop. So this is going up Jebel Jais. This is a little bit further down to where I did one of the cycling shots earlier. Shot from the back. Again, kind of tracking the focus here, and just allowing it to happen. You can't really plan for how lens flare flows in. I think that's the one bit you don't have control on. You kind of know when we're a little bit further down, you're going to be too late, and when you're a little bit further out, you're not getting it. You kind of see when the sun's going to hit it. And I think when you get the question earlier, where do you get the kind of lens flare from? I think you get it when it's kind of on the borderline of the mountain. And this, again, you can see the speed we're going up at. This is just a matter of hammering shots and shooting at a fast speed. There's a question coming up.
The vignetting on the sides, is it deliberate or?
I've added that, yeah. I love vignetting. It's a very personal taste. Some clients like it, some don't. But so the dark, well, here you probably wouldn't notice too much, but definitely in the corners, the vignetting is something I tend to add to most of my photographs. Any other questions? Then we did a lovely trip down to Liwa. I'm going to talk about Liwa in the desert in some of the pictures coming up a little bit later. Who's ever photographed in Liwa in the empty quarter? Has everyone been? There's a hand coming up. You've been? It's just paradise. It's just, what you see here is basically what you get for hundreds of kilometers if you want to. It's just like endlessly dunes, small ones, big ones, and, it's serious driving. So when Infinity launched the QX80, I got the car for 2-3 days to build up an image library of on-road photography as well as off-road. And this is kind of the car that's capable for some serious off-road driving. The only niche was we had to bring the car back in one piece because they only had one show model which had to go on to display the next day. So we had to be a bit careful how we drove. So again, I kind of worked with a professional driver who just knows how to drive in sand dunes. So who knows what kind of lens I've used here? Oh, sorry? 150. This is shot with 400. There's a really long telephoto lens. So we're kind of standing up on a higher sand dune, and Marshall is the guy who's driving. And I said, Marshall, I took a photo with no car. I just took a blank photo. And I said, Marshall, it'd be really cool if you can just go and play in these sand dunes a bit, and then I'll just kind of photograph it as it happens. So he's on a two-way radio, I'm on a two-way radio, and then we can communicate a bit. So he kind of drives in, and the nice thing about this photograph, there's not a single tire track in it. Yeah, none of that's photoshopped out. So that's the one nice thing about Liwa, it's just like it's empty. You go to Hatta, you go to Fossil Rock, there's like 1 million tracks. So obviously, yeah, his track is here, and then in a moment he disappeared about here. I kind of lost him, and then he came out. But this photograph is kind of one I really enjoy because it gives a sense of scale. And it's not about flying sand. It's not about speed. There's some other photos that are that, but it's just really. And this is, I can't remember if it was early morning or the end of the day, but I'm going to talk about sand dunes shortly. You see there's lots of shadow and texture. So this is, either early morning or the end of the day photograph, because otherwise you wouldn't get that richness in terms of sand dunes.
On the same point, do you use HDR at all? Do you bracket
No.
in most of your photos just
No.
to manage the highlights and shadows?
Yeah, so all in camera. So something like this.
Single shot?
Single shot, yeah. So it would be, I think there's enough data in the camera
You can lift the shadows
to
as
just
well.
put it together like that. So when the timing is right, If I wait too long, the sun will be too low and the shadows will be too big and you kind of lose it because it's all too dark. So a lot of it is about timing. So the shot you've got here is basically as it was in camera. And then just make sure that the focus and the tracking is on here. And then sort of looking at the sand dunes, how they develop. I can talk about it now, or I can talk about it later. Let's talk about it now. So we were up in Liwa 2-3 weeks ago. With a family, and you kind of see what light does in sand dunes. And I'll try to explain it. So the sun's going down, right? When the sun's really high up, what we spoke about earlier, there's no shadows. Everything is just yellow. Where were we recently? One of the other shots is coming next. We also went out in the middle of the day, and you're photographing, everything is just yellow and featureless. It doesn't look very nice. And that's where you probably might have to bracket to bring some of the stuff in. So I'm kind of waiting for the sun to go down. So there's one moment whereby the sun is not too low, whereby it's creating shadows like this. But there's still enough light around to sort of light it up. And when it's too low, then everything just turns black. So this will be too black, and then you only partly see the car and things like that. So what you've got to keep an eye out for when you're there, let's say the sun is setting down behind you guys. So when I shoot into the sun, it's not going to work for a shot like this, because everything's just going to be backlit, there's no color and everything. When I shoot exactly that direction, it's not going to work either, because everything, the light's behind me, is just going to fill up all the shadows. So you kind of got to look left, or you got to look right, where you kind of got the side light, and that's where you kind of get the beautiful patterns and the textures coming from the sun. So you got to kind of look left and right to see, well, actually, there's a nice pattern of sand dunes that work. Or it's the other side, either one way or the other. So you kind of got to really sort of read the sand dunes.
I'm sorry, a separate question.
Please.
Again, it's regarding just motion.
Yeah.
And there are two aspects. One is your subject is moving.
Mm.
And you said you manage that by being at the same speed, more or less. But also the fact that your hand will shake, and your hand will shake.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
So in your, let's say, experience, which is the most critical one? The subject movement? I mean, can the subject be captured more easily, for example, if your hand was steady? Of course it can.
Yeah.
But what is typically more critical? And I say that because I've recently been walking around with like the latest Nikon, and I was thinking
wrong brand.
Wrong brand. True. But I was so pleased with it because I'd just taken it out of the box, and it was in a market, one of the sort of more, let's say, some of these markets that few people will go to. That was like in Beirut, actually.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit concerned. So I wasn't standing with this expensive camera, dishing it in front of everyone. So my hand, so I was walking a lot of the time and just seeing a certain scene develop and taking the photos, but none of them were crisp, even at 1/25th, 1/80th. So I figured hand movement is seriously critical.
Yeah, 100%. Especially because that's about a borderline handheld sharpness.
With a 28mm lens, I thought they would be like, pin sharp. And few of them were. So I'm thinking, what do you do to stabilize your hand, especially in movement? Is it just literally just free holding? Or?
The easiest to answer that question is, well, I've worked with Canon.
Use Canon. Okay, that's the answer.
That's an easy answer. I think, so when it comes to handheld, so when it's car-to-car stuff, obviously, in the back of the car, it's bouncing around. I don't use a tripod on the back of a car because the car bounces and everything bounces. I kind of handheld it. So sometimes, depending on the car I'm shooting at, so if I can hold it closer to my body or kind of embrace it, kind of package it, that kind of absorbs most of the vibration. So that's one option. Or sometimes I'm laying flat on the car. I really want to get a low angle, so I'm kind of laying and I kind of handholding it, and I kind of try to go with the flow of the car, but at the same time also be mindful about kind of the composition of it. So it's about, it's feeling it. And also, I kind of know what shutter speed I can shoot at to say, well, I'm going to be safe, or it's kind of risky kind of business. So Yeah, I think it's a bit of experience and it's a bit of kind of embracing the vibration as much as you can.
Thank you.
So let's, this is not shot on a Canon, it's shot on a drone, but this is something I shot last week. I kind of really like. There's a question here, please.
Generally speaking, do you dial down or dial up your shutter speed when you're testing?
Dial up or dial down the shutter speed? The shutter speed or exposure?
It depends which one you're playing with at that time.
Most of my photography I'll do in aperture priority. It's kind of easy. I kind of know the aperture I want, either lots of detail or very little detail. And then I listen to my camera what it's doing. And I think when you photograph a lot, it's you kind of hear your camera, so you kind of know when the shutter speed is going slower, you kind of, oh, there's something not right here. I tend to shoot aperture priority when it's bright daylight. They don't have to worry about the shutter speed because that's just going to regulate. When I then do shutter speed priority, like some of the movement stuff, I kind of very careful, and I kind of know anything under 1/20th doesn't work, and anything above the car-to-car stuff, anything above 125 doesn't give me the movement I need. So it's kind of in between there that I just kind of dial it up and dial it down. And what I said earlier is as we're photographing, I'm constantly going faster, slower, just kind of eliminating a bit of risk on that. So this is some work I did last week up in Omaha. Well, actually, it was outside of the resort, clearly, with the new Lamborghini Urus. I just love the shot here. It just got a lot of energy, and it's a typical shot you expect from Lamborghini. And this is the one I got from the ground. Again, shot with a long lens. You don't want to get anywhere close when these guys are driving the cars. But it's just lots of energy in there. So this is, coming back to your question earlier, this is shot at aperture priority. Try to keep the aperture kind of relatively low and a really fast shutter speed. And I just let the camera decide what shutter speed. And this is shot not in the middle of the day, but it's probably towards the end of the day. So light's not an issue. So I can kind of keep the ISO down. And then you got to go with the flow. So what happens then is I'll kind of tell the driver the shot I'm kind of looking for. And then for them it's kind of carte blanche playing. I think they just love. There's 650 brake horsepower in a super fast car. And just go and do your donuts in an open gravel area. Obviously you've got the dunes in the backdrop. And kind of stay in this parameter. So ideally I would put a cross in the sand saying, well, that's the middle. You drive around either clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on the light, obviously. And then just allowing them to bit of play. And then as you shoot it, you just photograph. So this is not cropped or anything. This is just basically from the camera. So the only thing I've done is add a bit of drama and sharpness and contrast. But this is not much modifications in here. And then on the screen, yeah, there's a bit more sharpness than there is on here. But it's just powerful explosion of cars. So I think, and that probably counts for anyone in terms of photography, is trying to shoot as much variety as you can. That's kind of what I always try to do with most of my work. So before we move on to some of the other, any car questions? No? So I think there's always an interesting question from a commercial point of view. It's great to talk about great photos, but how do you get to work for certain brands? I think that's something, I've got two examples or storylines that kind of illustrate where opportunities come from. And especially those who are either professional photographers or want to move into photography say, well, great photos, but how do you land a job like that? And so I've got a couple of examples that kind of summarize it, how I got to do really cool projects. So between 2007 and 2010, I shot a race in Abu Dhabi called the Abu Dhabi Adventure Challenge. Not anyone heard about it? It was a bit of an unknown little thing. So basically, for 4 consecutive years, I spent 1 week shooting all those adventure sports in Abu Dhabi. Every year, I made a big coffee table book out of it, which then they kind of used for promotional pieces. And I loved it. A lot of the races that are here, I kind of knew because in that stage, I photographed a lot of other international races. So this was kind of, for me, familiar terrain. And over time, I kind of got regarded as kind of the desert specialist. I would spend a lot of time with these guys in the desert, and we always come back with nice photographs. This is probably a nice example whereby this is a live race, right? I can't tell these guys to go and do this and do that. These guys are just running to get from A to B as quick as possible. So a lot of it would then have to do with knowing, as a racer myself, what's going to happen, because you're going to preempt, they're going to do this movement or that, and then kind of be ready with it as well. So generally when I do a shoot like this, I probably work with 2 or 3 different bodies with different lenses, so you can quite quickly react if you need to shoot wide or long, etc. So I did this for 4 years, 4 beautiful books, and then I got a call 2 years after that happened. This is probably about 2012, give and take, a year more or less. I got a call from the PR agency from the Abu Dhabi Tourism Authority. He said, we want to do a really cool PR hero shot for the Abu Dhabi Golf Championship. So if we would fly the 2 best golf players in the world, Kingma and Luke Donalds, down to Liwa, you want to find a nice location in the desert that's going to make a really impactful photo. So you're the desert specialist, so you knew the desert better than some of us in the office. So we based ourselves in Qasr Al Sharab, which is one of the nice hotels up in Abu Dhabi, because these guys are not going to spend 4 hours driving in the car. They just get a helicopter ride in from Abu Dhabi. It's nice to be famous, right? We got to drive, they got a helicopter. So I recce'd it 2 weeks before. I kind of knew exactly where I wanted to be, marked it on the GPS. I was kind of looking for, I needed height, because if you get height, you get an idea about size and expanse and scale and everything. And I kind of needed something to isolate them between the background, because if they would have been standing here, you kind of potentially lose them a bit. So I was kind of looking for a happy smile or a face or something that kind of separated them from the grandeur. And then, so we kind of set it all up, and then these guys arrive. You get 20 minutes. They helicopter them in, they drive them in, and then they just play the golf balls, and then you time it exactly so you know the light's perfect. You kind of, and again, what I said earlier was, because when I did my recce, I drove in. I probably recce'd it at the time we were going to photograph it, because that's always the safest. When the sun's going to be there, if I shoot that way, it's not going to work. So if I shoot left or right, that's going to work. And then kind of looking at places to say, well, the sun is that side coming in. So we're going to get some nice shadows on this side of the dunes. It's nice sight lit, but not too sight lit. So you kind of lose it. And then these guys just sit there, play the balls, and I got a whole bunch of different imagery out of it. And they love it. So that's on the golf photograph. Then 4 years later, it's really interesting how the things go, right? So I was trying to explain some of the jobs I do. So there was a guy who worked, he was my main PR contact at Abu Dhabi Tourism Authority. He then left the company, he then started another company, did some things, and then he had his own PR agency. And then he just won British Airways as one of their clients. He said, well, you can remember, Wouter, 4 years ago we did this beautiful photo shoot in the desert with these golf players. I've just won the account for British Airways, and we need to do something with Margaret Robbie. I had no clue who Margaret Robbie was, but does anyone know? Well, you guys know, because this pretty lady on the left. But she's a well-known Hollywood actress. And basically how it then went is like, well, we want you to go back to the desert and try to create something as stunning, as impactful, as nice as what we did with these golf players. So fine. It's nice. So again, we based ourselves at Qasr Al Sharab because it's kind of a nice location to base yourself at. And then I had to drive in and around that area to find something that would work for a photograph for British Airways. So basically, what they wanted was there's a beautiful shot of her with some pilots. And I've got, I shot 4 different photographs on it. So when I recce'd it, I put someone else there with someone else kind of saying, well, this is how the photograph is going to look like. So I had it all approved, so I knew exactly what the location was going to be. Again, she gets in by helicopter, 10 minutes hair and makeup. She jumps in the Land Cruiser. And then we're all ready, everything all set up. And then she steps out, and then she comes with Agent 1, Agent 2, Agent 3, lots of politics. So I know all these guys, oh, what's happening here? I said, I know, we're just going to take some photographs. So I try to keep it. So I thought I'd talk them through it so they're all happy. And then she was just a lovely person to work with. So I've got different photographs, and this is the first one I took, and it's still my personal favorite. Reason why I know, because there's no footprints. It's just, she just stood there. The pilot worked. She's just beautifully sight-lit, shoes in her hand, bare feet, and it just kind of worked from a composition point of view. So I knew I had 20 minutes. 20 minutes, that's it. So the moment she sort of gets out of the car, you've got 20 minutes to get a shot, and then she leaves again. So you're a bit of under time pressure to make sure it all works. And then they don't want just one photo. They want ideally 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 photos. Then they can kind of choose the best one. Then the client, British Airways, we love how you've done the photo shoot. We love the photos. We love how you kind of manage the talent. So do you travel? I said, yeah, I travel. I'll go anywhere in the world, right? So that was kind of my entry in doing a lot of work for British Airways. And that was my entry into travel as well. So from there, in that same shoot, we shot Orlando Bloom on the helipad in Abu Dhabi. And the client, normally when you have celebrities like that, they come with security, right? And I can remember he came with this big, massive baboon. It was just all muscles. And I'm thinking, nothing's going to happen on the helipad, right? And then at one stage, I see the client, a lady called Helena, kind of holding on to dear life to our lovely security guy. I said, Helena, you're right. So I've got a fear for heights. So although she still approved shooting up here, she was just terrified. So she just held on to a big solid anchor and then kind of watching it from the side. And then how I photographed this was I did a test run. So we photographed it with someone else. It has some studio lights left and right, all battery powered. And the one thing is I don't like when they all stand down, hold hands, and then you get a very boring photo. So I love a bit of energy. So we would start a little bit further back. And then these guys would walk forward, and I'm kind of walking backwards. And then eventually I know when to kind of be the sweet spot when the lights work, and that's when I kind of take my photograph. So I kind of, you do 1 photo, 2 photo, and I kind of knew I had it. Then on the last one, I thought, well, the guard was off. I thought, well, I've got my photograph, we're fine. So I'm kind of walking back, and then I forgot there was this cable. So my lovely client's got a fear of heights. Sees me then tripping over a cable, kind of edging the edge of the helipad. And there's a big drop on the side of these things. So she still remembers it today. So we've not done any shoots on helipad since. That then led to some work sorry, this question. Yeah. Not in this one, no. No, I did have, so the question was, did I use studio lights, photos? So not in this particular shot. I did have an assistant with battery-powered Pro Photo studio lights and things like that for some of the other shots, but for this one in particular, we didn't. I just wanted to see how the light was going to fall, and I think it's soft enough to allow it to recognize it. So the one thing I have done is I did bring a lot of brightness back in her dress because that was a bit dark on it. So I think that's the one bit of Photoshop. So this one didn't have lights. That one did. This one obviously did. 5 minutes. David walks in, and then 5 minutes later he just walks off. So you got to make sure you get your photograph. There's no messing about. And then the interesting thing happens. I had a bit of a relationship with British Airways, and then they emailed me this photo, and they said, Wouter, we've got a celebration coming up in Hong Kong. Do you want to go to Hong Kong and create something similar to this poster? So this is some of the heritage posters from British Airways in probably 40, 50 years ago. I said, great, I'll go to Hong Kong. So I spent 2 days going around the streets in Hong Kong, trying to create an image that would somehow have some of these ingredients in there. And I forgot the name of the street, but I went to the same street. The street's still there, but none of the else is there, right? All the neon lights have gone. You can see the peak. That's all built up with lots of high rises. So we kind of stood there and said, well, this is not going to be a very, impactful photo. So I walked around, but one of the things I did want was kind of the neon lights. That for me is Asia, that's Hong Kong. So I found this street, which is close to a night market. So the night market is on the right, the metro station is on the left. Try to do this at 8 o'clock in the evening when everyone wants to go to the night market. You kind of know the amount of traffic we had. This is a well-known model in the UK, David Gandy. I've worked with him a couple of times. So everything here is kind of set up and to a certain extent staged. So all the crew here, they're all wearing heritage uniforms for the museum. So they're all wearing old uniforms, all kind of branding in it. He's wearing a nice old pilot jacket. I've kind of set it up side lit and kind of had to play with it. And And again, you need probably get 20 minutes, and you got to shoot 3, 4 different options. I think I have a short behind-the-scenes video that kind of explains the energy on set. And if there's any questions, we can address that.
I close my eyes so I can watch the dreams suspend nights. All of this time, the moving wheels spin in my mind.
Imagine the chaos we created on that street, right? It's beautiful. So what you see in this behind-the-scenes photograph, you saw an iPad at one stage, I think, in the beginning. So often what I do with shoots like this, where there's many decision makers, you know, got a client, an agency, and everyone needs to have a say, I'll shoot on a Wi-Fi link to an iPad. So whatever I'm photographing on my camera appears on a screen on the iPad, which is perfect because the clients can see what we're getting, and then the clients are kind of away from me as well, so I can just get to work, which kind of works for me for shoots like this. Is there any questions about Hong Kong? From there, I did another shoot with David Gandy in Milan. Similar thing, trying to set up the setting, you get them for 20 minutes, and obviously the whole heritage. So British Airways, this is all the branding they get, and that's all they want. It's just, you know, there's enough branding here to make them happy. Obviously, it's a very British car, a Jaguar. E-Type. Is right? Yeah. So I'm shooting on the iPad, right? The girls at the office at British Airways, they love David Gandy. So I'm taking a photograph, like, oh, look at his eyes. Oh, look at this, look at that. I said, girls, we've got to focus. We've got to get some nice photos here. Then went off to Hong Kong, did another shoot. So I've got 2 shots here. Shot with a wide lens. Obviously, you can see it. There's a bit of fill-in light, a flash. Oh, sorry. Oh, go back. And then there's a head-on shot with a longer lens. It was about them. They're 2 well-known models, and it was about bringing Hong Kong in the picture and then trying to bring some of the branding in there. So British Airways has been, you know, a good client, got to travel, and as long as you deliver good photographs, everything is all happy. And I was just kind of looking at years and years of expansive travel and going to see the world and everything. Then British Airways is not doing very well as a company. So they have 3 PR offices. They've got 1 in the UK, 1 in North America, and then they got 1 for the rest of the world. And I was dealing with the rest of the world. So I had 4 ladies, 4 contacts. And then I decided to merge the whole PR team into 1. And guess what? All the 4 ladies I were kind of clients dealing with, they all left. And then they just merged the office, and that was kind of the end of the British Airways career for now. So it's so you never know from a business point of view how things work. Right? You're having a great time, you're traveling, everyone's all happy with the photos, and then they kind of merge a team together, and then, you know, some people leave and some people don't. So in this case, I kind of lost all the key contacts, and I've not done a job for British Airways for a while. So it's that's just the nature of commercial photography, I guess, as we call it. So I've got another example. Where are we on time? 7:15. I'll go through this. You want to take a break? Up to me. Up to them. I could talk for hours. Let me... let me just go through this quickly, and then we'll have a break after that, because that kind of breaks it up, because otherwise my slides are messed up. A few years ago, I managed to do this book, Dubai Aerial Tour. So you've probably seen it in most of the bookstores. It's done for Motivate Publishing. It's probably sold all around the country. So the big question is, how do you get to do a commissioned job to hang out of a helicopter for 2 days shooting an aerial book? These jobs don't, no one's just going to call out of the blue and say, hey, Wouter, man, I love your website. You want to come and do an area book? That's generally not how it works. I wish it did, but it doesn't. So there's a couple of things that happen in the lead into it. 1 year earlier, I got a call from a sports marketing agency. They called and said, Wouter, we don't have any budget, but we're doing this PR stunt celebrating 20-year anniversary of Dubai tennis. You want to come and take our aerial photographs? So, but, you know, there's hardly any money. I said, fine, let's not do it for the money, but let's do it for the fun. So, fine. So I said, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So they booked a helicopter, and then they had Djokovic and I think Federer, who were going to stand on a helipad. and then they were filming and taking photographs at the same time. So I was just sitting there in a helicopter, all kind of comfortable, film crew next to me. You can see this guy here on the headset trying to get us away, because two things were happening at the same time. We're doing some stuff from the helicopter, and they're doing some stuff, live interview from the helipad. The one thing that doesn't work with a live interview is a helicopter that's making lots of noise. So we basically got asked by this guy, go away and come back 15 minutes later. So, and I'm just sitting there, the door's open, sitting on the side of the helicopter, and the pilot was bored. So let's go and have a look around. And we flew around the whole of Dubai. So I was just, the light conditions were kind of so-so. It was not the best time of the day, but I thought I was just taking lots and lots of photographs. So secretly, not secretly, but I kind of took the opportunity to take lots of aerial photos of Dubai. And then I still kind of gave the photo back to the client. I had a series. The one thing I learned from this shoot, there was no communication between the platform and us in the helicopter. Zero. So these guys walked up there thinking, all right, what do we do now? So it kind of, there's some better shots than this, but I think as an example, it kind of illustrates that you got two great tennis players on a helipad and not having any slightest clue what they're supposed to be doing. So I guess that kind of illustrates the photo. I still sent some photos to the client. The client was super happy. They got what they wanted. So fair enough, that's cool. Then in the same year, I did another project, which was called Footsteps of Tessinger, which is an expedition of an explorer that walked from Salalah all the way down to Abu Dhabi. So 1,600 kilometers on foot, leaving Salalah on the beach, and then all the way down to the Corniche in Abu Dhabi. That was a 44-day expedition, and I shot 22 days out of it. And I loved it. It was probably one of my nicest gigs I've done here. Going through the empty quarter on the Oman side, seeing the mountains, and so much was about the hospitality we got around was unbelievable. But the biggest challenge was, at the end of the day, it was basically 3 guys and a bunch of camels going through the sand dunes for 44 days. So if you're not careful, the only pictures you're going to get is 3 guys and a bunch of camels going through the sand dunes. And it gets really boring after a while. And then I thought, well, and the brief was, hey, just come back with some nice photos. So the brief was really simple. And I thought, well, I could take this opportunity in many different ways. And I thought, actually, I really want to embrace shooting a really nice variety of work. And I think when you do expedition work and kind of unplanned work like this, it's about getting as much variety as you can. So I've kind of different lenses. I got beautiful, again, shot with a 400 telephoto lens in the middle of the day, whereby you see kind of the Fata Morgana, watery kind of thing coming through. Beautiful portraits. This dude with a gun was beautiful. This is shot quite early in the expedition up in Oman still, in Salalah. So I was taking some photographs here, and I've got a big studio light just outside of the camera, which kind of throws a bit of light. Sunset's beautiful. And I kind of showed him the camera to this guy, and he's like, oh, nice photo, nice photo. Wait, don't leave. Then he ran to his car, and he came back with this big, massive, whatever it is, AK-58 gun, whatever, because he had a stick. He looked manly, so he had to also look manly kind of thing. So we went through the forest, some beautiful, kind of portraits of Adrian Hayes, who was the main guy, with his 3 companions. This is shot with a bit of motion, just to sort of give a bit of energy in it. And, some portraits, what I said, and then we kind of made it all the way down to Abu Dhabi. So that happened in the same year I did the aerial shoot. Then Adrian launched his book. So Adrian finished his expedition, he wrote a book, and a lot of my photographs ended up being in his book. So when he launched the book, I was also invited to go to Motivate Publishing. He said, come, you've also been part of the journey, so I would love to invite you to come to the launch of the book. And then an interesting conversation happened. I met the editor-in-chief, John Deacon, at the launch. He said, Wouter, we love the photographs you've done for the book, because the book looks amazing. The text is nice, but the photographs are really special. We would love to do a project together. So what should we shoot? I said, you know what? I've got some nice aerial photos. Why don't we do an aerial book? And he says, it's exactly what we need. So in that conversation, doing some really good work on this expedition, I managed to sort of open up the conversation and say, well, let's go and do a project together. And that ended up being the aerial book. So for me, there's always a lesson in there. Doing kind of exceptionally good work always leads to unexpected opportunities. And I think that's something that follows through all the time. There is a behind-the-scenes video from this, which is on my website. I might skip it, just from a time point of view. And then I just want to talk through some of the photos. Aerial stuff, lots of gear, right? So this is not a drone, little operator from the side trying to get some photos. This is hanging out of a helicopter shooting, with 4 bodies, different lenses. So I shot on a 24-70, 70-200, 200, 400, and then I had a prime 600 as well. So, because the last thing you want to be doing is sitting on the side of a helicopter, everything is shaking, everything is moving, and then trying to change lenses, and it's, oops, sorry, that's not going to work. So I think having 4 lenses, everything is all attached. I'm harnessed in, everything is kind of hooked in together. So safety is paramount. And then we had a very detailed list. So I knew exactly by the minute, in the 10 hours of airtime we had, where we're going to be. So we had 5 hours, so we had 2 days. 5 hours day 1, 5 hours day 2. And I planned it knowing where the sun's going to be and the right angle. So I've got some photographs to go through. My laptop's having some challenges. So this is some shots, and then we're going to go into the break. So this is done, I think, 3 years ago. A relatively easy shot to get from a helicopter, right? You just sit on the side, you put it 24-70, you kind of say, oh, this is nice, good composition, and then you kind of frame it. All the clouds here and the beautiful weather, that's all as it was. It was shot in December. Now, we're also in December now, so we were lucky with the weather. But we had to postpone it 4 times. First time, we didn't get permission. The second time, the Ministry of Defense didn't come with us, so it needs to be someone from the military in the plane. The third time, we had fog. We were supposed to fly, and then it was just like, close the airport. I said, well, we're not flying when the fog is up. So on the 4th time, we finally managed to fly, and then we had the best weather we could have imagined. Beautiful shot of Burj Khalifa. Obviously, that's all now changed in terms of a landscape. But what I really like about doing stuff from a helicopter is some of this, the more detailed work. And this is something you can't shoot with a drone. This is me sitting on the side of the helicopter looking down saying, oh, that's just a really nice texture. There's something happening there. And I get a nice big telephoto lens and it's trying to frame something that kind of works. You've got to be really quick. The helicopter just keeps on moving. The helicopter's not going to sit and wait for you to go and figure things out. You've got to be really quick. I think I shot 25,000 photos in the 2 days I was in a helicopter. I was just like, bam, 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 bam. But what I love about this is early morning light down in Dera. The sunlight is not even in the streets yet. There's some nice crisp colors. I love the texture. When you look at the next shot, there's an interesting one here. I wanted to do a fisheye shot of Palm Jumeirah. Everyone who's shot with a fisheye kind of knows everything is distorted, right? So when you shoot people in a fisheye shot, everyone looks like really weird. So you can only use it so often. But then I thought, well, if you look at the island, it's round. So it'd be beautiful to shoot that with a fisheye lens. So you can imagine you sitting there on the side of the helicopter. And then if you're looking out, you still got half the helicopter. Because it's so wide, you still got half the helicopter in the frame. So you kind of, on a headset, you're talking to the pilot. I said, Andy, who's also a photographer, so that helped. Andy, I think I'm kind of ready. And then what he does, we kind of orbit when we do the circles. So we're kind of coming in from this side. And then I say, oh, Andy, I'm ready. All right, here we go. And then he tips the helicopter outwards. And then you kind of lean out as much as you can. And then you kind of get a shot like this. So the only thing I've done was a bit of skidding of the helicopter here, but everything else is kind of in frame. And then he kind of flies through it. You take whatever it is, how many pictures you can get, 35 in one go. And then eventually, you walk up with a shot like this. I love that story. And then this ended up being one of the photographs on the National when they launched the book. So Nakhil called, they wanted to buy the photo, and Atlantis Hotel, they got all excited. And obviously it's a pretty cool photo. Again, I love my detailed work, early morning. I think this is used to be the defense roundabout, right? Yeah, those who've lived here for a long time. There's not a roundabout anymore. Again, detailed work. So this is flying towards Jebel Ali Palm, and I'm looking back, and I'm just looking back into the port. And I just got a 600mm lens, and a couple of photographs just looking back at this. And again, time of the day is key, light works. Who knows where this is? Any camel specialists in the room? My mum, exactly, yeah. So this is the Camel racetrack, the new Camel racetrack. After the Rugby 7 stadiums. Maybe that rings, there we are, yeah. So, obviously I've photographed it in many different ways. I've got a super wide photo that shows the whole Mamoon track. And then I've got my long lens out, and then I just wanted to crop something that just looks really cool. And here you can see a car. Here you can see a car. And I think on the computer you can see an occasional camel around here as well. So it's super high up and shooting super low down. I think that's, and again, you can't do that over a drone. You really got to sort of sit in a helicopter and get inspired by what you see. You can't plan for this either. You just got to be up in the air and see it. And this is one of the last photographs I took in that series. So this is the end of day 2. The helicopter's got to be on the ground before darkness. And we're coming back from the marina, and then the airport's somewhere here, and then we're kind of flying by, and I was just taking some photographs, and I just saw the blue light. And I just got all excited. I said, Andy, we cannot land the helicopter. It's just too pretty. We've got to take photographs. You cannot go back. It's just so nice. And he's like, are you sure? I said, I'm totally sure. We cannot go back. So I can't stop, but I can go slower. As long as we're going back, everyone's fine. So he's slowly moving back. And I'm just taking photographs because I could see how rich the color is in the blue and just the right time of the day. And but it's challenging, right? Because the helicopter's vibrating. We're still moving. And then managing that shutter speed is just like ridiculous. It's just, you don't have a lot of time. And you don't have time to think. And let's see, 125 or 160. And then you've lost it. So you've got to sit in the helicopter and you got to bracket it. And the nice thing about these ones, you can just ramp up the ISO if you need to and then hopefully fix it later. And that's kind of what I did. So some of them were too dark, some of them were too bright. And when I shot like this, I'd rather have a slightly darker photo, which is easier to sort of bring up the shadow, than something that's overexposed. And then another detail shot down in the beach. I love that 2 people there. I don't know if they're a couple, if there's a bit of love or there's an argument, but it's, just early morning sunrise. It's a happy place, sitting in a helicopter. Cool. I'm just going to fast forward for this, and then I'm going to come to this slide. No, this one. No. Cool. We're going to stop for a break shortly. I'm a little bit over, but I'm sure there's coffee, right? Coffee still there? Cool. Before we get up, there's something we're going to do tomorrow, which I'm going to talk about after the break, whereby I'm going to talk about the power of print and how printing has enhanced my business, etc., etc. So we're going to do a collaboration with a printing studio here in Dubai. So everyone's here in the room is invited to come and see me tomorrow as an extension of this workshop to go and print something for your own. But there's a couple of housekeeping things we need to talk through. I'm going to talk about the opportunity a little bit later, but it's only for those who have been in this room today. So don't tell all your brothers and fathers and sisters and friends, well, free prints, shh, little secret. A couple of things we need to do. You need to email your photograph in advance to this email address. It needs to be ideally an A3 size print. I think the better the quality, the better the print, right? So I think we're looking at A3 print. Done? Perfect. It's here. Art Plus. I put this here because it's super long, but it's the only way to find it in Google Maps. Because I put it in, it's an Arcus. And then there's 2 sessions. One starts at 6, the other one starts at 7:30. So the key thing is that you need to register your preferred time, which we're going to do in the break, at the reception, or at the end when we all finish, we're going to do that at the reception as well. So I think that's an opportunity for, I'm going to talk about print a little bit later, but this is something I needed to share with you before we go into the break. And then, because you guys need to do your thing. So hopefully we can all do it tomorrow.
Sorry,
so that's for me for now, for pause. And there's a question.
Yeah, just on the image you took at sunset from the helicopter.
Yeah.
And you said you bracket. Do you bracket the ISO or you bracket just the shutter speed?
I've actually, in this photograph, I went full manual. Because I didn't want to risk, I took one photo which I kind of thought that works. And then I went to manual. Kind of kept my aperture as it was. Because that was not going to go up anyway. Because I want to keep it as low as possible. I was bracketing with my shutter speed. And I kind of put my ISO quite high, thinking that's probably the borderline I can get away with.
What is that borderline for you?
I think I probably shot this at 4,000 ISO.
Okay.
No, that's nice. Done that 10 years ago, you would have known how a 4,000 ISO would look like. It would just look terrible. So, yeah, so 4,000, I think, or 3,200, something along that line.
Thank you.
All right, enjoy the break. I'm here for questions, and then we're back in, how long? 10, 15 minutes? 15 minutes. Thanks, guys. This is for tomorrow, yeah. I need to switch. to JLI. Are we on? Yes, we're on. It's a bit of inspiration on the screen, right? There was another one. Is someone going to give me the green light, or am I just going to start? Let's just start. Because I've got more than I've got time for. I'm just going to start and everyone else can just join. So welcome back. Have we all done the registration for the printing stuff tomorrow? Yeah, good. I'm going to talk about it at the end as well, just as a reminder. So what are we going to talk about before we break up? I'm going to talk about personal work. I'm going to talk about some of the commercial work. I'm going to talk about the EOS R, the new mirrorless camera Canon has brought out, which I had to play with. And they're going to talk about print. I think that's kind of the angle we're going for. So what's personal work? Personal work is where you got to do fun stuff, what I call it, right? Personal work, I think, doesn't matter if you're amateur, semi-professional, or super professional, or super professional. I think personal work is something you should always be doing. And I do it all the time. And I've got photographs that come out of it. So what does personal work give me? It gives me the opportunity to go and take photographs with really cool people just because, I think it's a good idea. So I come up with concepts and ideas and then say, well, let's go and have some fun. It builds my portfolio. So with personal work, I can do things clients haven't asked me to do, kind of thing. So it builds a portfolio, which obviously ends up being stuff I can then present to clients to do more work of. It allows me to practice with new equipment. So if I want to do more stuff with studio lights, then I do personal work and I kind of practice and try, and then by the time you figured it out, you're kind of ready for a commission job. There was one other thing, and when a new camera comes out, I don't want to go straight into a photo shoot not knowing how the camera works. So personal work is a great opportunity to go and learn and test and build. And there's enough examples whereby I've done personal work, which has kind of led to commission work. Some people would say, fake it until you make it. And I believe you better do it to prove it. I think there's a distinct difference between, I'm just going to sweet talk my way in, and then, I don't work, so you make a mess of it. You're better off having done it in the past, be able to show to clients, this is what you're going to get. Just makes the conversation so much easier. So this is a shoot I did with Florian, a friend of mine. And he said, well, let's go and create a really cool series about surfing. And he's a surfer, and he does a bunch of other stuff. And I said, well, I'm sure we can get a beautiful action surfing shot. And some of that I think even lives on my website. But let's go and do some other stuff. So we said, well, why don't we go to Okudwa Lakes, where there's no surf, there's lots of flamingos. Sit there in your wardrobe, and we're going to read a morning paper. This has got nothing to do with brands. There's nothing to do about pull-up banners and showing logos. This is just, having a bit of fun. This is a shoot we did on the top of my villa. So we live up in Jebel Ali village. Sometimes I get inspiration by other photographs I've seen. So actually, I love that photograph. I love the angle idea and everything. And this is something that came out of that. It's not necessarily people playing golf on a rooftop, but there was people playing golf in places where you normally don't play golf. So I called Claudine, which I have photographed in the past, because she's a Lululemon ambassador. So I photographed her for a client. I've done a film project about her. And then this is 2 days before she's going on a summer holiday. Claudine, you want to take your husband, Alex, who's a professional golfer, so both are professional golfers, and let's go and have some fun. Why don't you go and hit some goals on the roof of our villa? And she said, yeah, fun, let's go ahead and do it. So 20 minutes. They walk up, I have everything set up, and then we photograph it. And then what I do more and more now is actually create somebody behind the scenes. So this is a very quick 15-second summary of what our short shoot was about. So where the photographs lead to, I don't know. But, it ends up on my website. It gives some stories for social media, and I'm sure it eventually will get picked up. This is a photo shoot I did with a surfer called Karina. I photographed her for a client, and I want to come to it in a sec. And then I said, well, I've got waterproof housing, so I've got one of these big Aquatech heavy-duty waterproof equipment, which fits the 1DX camera in. And I've used it for a couple of photo shoots, and I thought, well, let's go and have some fun shooting surfing. And she's a surfer, so the one thing I don't have to worry about is that she's going to look good or not good. No, she's kind of a surfer, so she does it naturally. Again, first thing morning, sunrise, we start when it's dark, and we get into the water, and we're just playing around. It was not the biggest waves in Dubai, but just the energy and the splash and the backlit kind of did it. And this kind of lives in my portfolio. When I present it to clients, they just love it because it's kind of different. It's raw. It's not perfect. She's probably not the sharpest in the whole world, but there's lots of energy in her photograph, which I think kind of represents my style. There was a question here. I don't know, yes or no. I don't know. Is it overexposed? It's not the perfect dark background, but I think... Okay. I don't think it's overexposed. I think it tells a nice raw... When I look at it, well, personally, I could have toned it down, underexposed a couple of spots and make it darker, but then you would have probably not recognized her. She would have been kind of a bit backlit. So for me, but it's an interesting question, right? So overexposed, underexposed, 100% perfect, yes or no? I personally believe that a photograph needs to tell a story. And something needs to capture your attention. You look at it thinking, oh, what's happened? It's what's the background, what's kind of going on. And if that means that the photograph is not 100% perfect, but it kind of draws your attention, that for me stands out way more than having something that's perfectly positioned, exposure is just perfectly right, and then thinking, this is the most boring photograph I've ever looked at. That happens as well. So I think you kind of find that balance between picture perfect and good storytelling. I think that's... So is the exposure right? No, probably not. But,
That you don't care about the histogram.
Nah, I don't look at histogram.
No, okay.
So something like this, if it's in a waterproof housing, you've got your camera with all the buttons, you put it in the case, and you kind of don't have any control on it. It's got all these buttons on the outside, but it's really hard to attach. So you kind of shoot this on a aperture priority, live tracking, so al servo, I think it's called in Canon, yeah, al servo or tracking focus. You kind of jump in the water, and you put your focus in the middle, because something like this you don't plan, right? I'm moving, the waves are moving, the subject is moving, so it's just chaos for half an hour that we're in the water, and then you can look at the back and you can, through a little plastic, you can see some stuff and you get an idea what's working or no. But yeah, this is kind of just going out and seeing what happens. So if the client says back, I want exactly that same photo, but she has to wear our bikini, I kind of, okay, that's going to be interesting, because it's going to be really hard to recreate this, right? Because the sun needs to be right, the waves need to be right, the model needs to be right, but at least it gives an idea about kind of content I've produced. And it's personal work, so it's just all about having fun. Keeps on doing this. So this is another photograph I took of I photographed her husband quite a lot, David Labouchere, a well-known triathlete, for different brands, and I've created a movie about him as well. So his wife now is transitioning, going into what they call grey model. So she's starting her modeling career at the age of 40. She looks really good, beautiful grey hair. And then she said, well, I want to build a bit of portfolio work. I said, great. Why don't we go into the desert? I borrowed someone else's car, which was deregistered. So we had to put it on a flatbed, get the whole car there. So it was a whole shebang. But without a car, it would have been a bit boring. So I really wanted that kind of car. You just make sure you look after your own wardrobe. So she comes up with the cowboy boots and the beautiful dress, and we just go out there and then we just have some fun. She absolutely could not play golf. I've got a behind the scenes of her, but it just looks so weird because she has no idea how to play golf. But this shot kind of works. And then this is the kind of one I was after. And then I thought, I've got it, I'm happy with this. And then we shot 5, 6 other photos of her sitting in the car and changing the wardrobe. So you want to get as much content out of it on a day. You can.
While you're doing this, say, having fun, do you spend a lot of money on setting up all the teams?
So the question.
Everything free.
So the question is. So the question is. Someone's personal work does it. Personal work in general. I think. Do you invest money? I do. So I invest money in hiring equipment, which I don't own, but would love to buy, but want to try. I would invest money. I'm going to talk about a film series shortly. I invested a lot of money in that. But often when it's something like this, the money probably on this shoot I spent was on spending 500 dirhams on a recovery truck trying to get the car into the desert. The car I borrowed from someone I knew, and then she was taking care of her own hair and makeup and wardrobe and things like that. So the costs are kind of okay. And then she gets photos out of it. So she's happy because she's building her portfolio. I get someone to have a great time with and get portfolio work for me. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So yeah. So, but on the next one I'm going to talk about, which is our Curiosity series. So this is all personal work on photography. So I've been on and off film work for a number of years. And then, sorry, there's another question?
I have another question regarding the movies. Or
yeah?
Where do you get your background music from? Do you buy it or you borrow it? How it works?
Good question. $100 question on film production, right? So where do you get your movie from? Music. So there's a beautiful website which I use a lot called MusicBed, one word, musicbed.com, where you can license music. So I pay for the music. So all my personal work when it comes to a lot of, especially this series, I've purchased the music. So there's an expense, right? But you can license it in a different way. If you want to license it to a big television ad for 2 years, global, you're going to spend a lot of money. But if you do it for personal work, you pay a lot less. You still pay, but you pay less. So, it's still got to live online. It's got to take its own life. So you just got to pay for it. So MusicBed is one. And there's a few others, I think, but I think music is super important when it comes to film projects. There's the most boring twinkle twinkle music doesn't work. So I think lyrics are so important. Sorry, Spotify. Yeah, but you can't license music from Spotify, right? You can. No, I don't think you can. So coming back to Curiosity series. So I did a lot of photography. Then I did a couple of film projects. Canon sent me to Luxor, did a whole photography and film project there. And then I thought what I would really love to do is do a film series with athletes. And I got inspired about the concept on a flight with Emirates, can't remember where from, coming back. And then I saw a Christian Dior film on the ice, the screen on the computer. And then I kind of loved how it was filmed. It was like 5 minutes long. It was beautifully filmed, great storytelling. And I thought, this is really nice. That's what I want to do. So I kind of looked at it, 20 times and kind of digested it. And then I thought, what makes it really interesting? And then I called 5 of my friends, all athletes I've worked with. I said, I would love to create a beautiful film piece about your story as an athlete. What makes you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do the sport you do? What's been your career? Not everything is just all smooth, right? So this lady talks about maybe theories in her career, wanted to become a professional golf player and kind of didn't make it, but it opened up a conversation in a whole different way. So what I have here is a 90-second trailer. On my website, you'll find all 5 episodes. They're about 5 minutes each, all individual athletes telling their story. And the reason why I loved filmmaking, although we're stepping away from photography, but it's just this whole different element of storytelling. A photograph, you're trying to do it in one photograph, or you try to do it in series. But with film, you can bring in music, what we just heard, which kind of brings you into a certain mood. It allows you to do questions and answers so they can tell the story. So you've got voiceovers and captivating stories, and you've got background ambient light you try to bring in. It's just a really nice way of telling stories. So let's have a quick look at the trailer.
I definitely have calmed down a lot. I only break a bone maybe once a year now, whereas it used to be a lot more.
Always seem to fall on the wrong side of the law.
Curiosity is my chance to go somewhere somebody else hasn't been.
My reckless ways, my reckless ways, my reckless ways, my reckless ways, my reckless ways.
So I would encourage you to have a look at the website where all the 5 episodes are there. The reason why I'm putting it there is kind of a really nice example about personal work and what it leads to. And personal work is kind of where you experiment and do stuff, you build a body of work. So this series has led to do commission work for other sports brands, whereby it's, we love what you've done, could you do that for us? And I said earlier when I spoke about prove it to do it kind of thing, is exactly that. So sports brands have seen what I've done, could you do that for us? And that's been commission jobs for different sports brands doing very kind of identical work. So personal work kind of opens up the horizon, and I can only encourage you to do as much as you can. Commercial work, however, is what pays the bill, right? So we've got to make a living in Dubai. So what I've got here is a couple of examples of commercial work. This is a job I did for Red Bull down in LA. They've got this water park, Water Adventure, where you can do a whole bunch of stuff, but you can also do kind of slalom, kayaking. So Red Bull had this athlete in town called Joe Clark. He's based in the UK. Red Bull UK called me and said, well, I've got this guy in town. Do you want to spend an afternoon with him and get us a nice collection of photos? I said, I'd love to. I love working with athletes. So you probably have 4 or 5 hours with an athlete, and at the end of the day, they want to look good as well. So I want them to look good, and they want to look good themselves. So it's all about collaborating. So you kind of got to spend a bit of time with him saying, what can we shoot, and how can we shoot it? So I think that connection with an athlete is always super important. Then you kind of go in, and I've got 4 photographs, all very different. This is kind of just like the first shot I showed from Adventure HQ, right? Long lens, freeze the action, you kind of frame it, and you tell to Joe, start there, and then, kind of do your moves, your little dance, what you do in your kayak, kind of in between there, and then you kind of pass it. And then you kind of, it's white water, right? So you can't just stand and sit still. I lost the screen, have I? Was it? I'll have a puzzle on that. So you kind of stand there, long lens, you kind of freeze the action, and you get a one-off try at it. The moment he passes by, it's going to be another 9-minute lap before he's back at the place. So you're going to really sort of preempt the photographs you want to get. The second photograph we're going to get in here is the power up. Maybe it's just I wasn't charging. My light's on there. Oh, cool. Back in business. See what happens. So this is a long lens, kind of freeze the action. The second shot I got out of is a beautiful portrait. So I get him out of the water. He's still a bit wet. We got a light from the left, light from the right, kind of the style Red Bull loves. Then we went back into the water and said, I would love a nice underwater shot, which is not easy to get, right? So the camera goes back into the waterproof housing. You're kind of in the water. And then before you dive in, you got to think about all little elements. Obviously, you got to think about focus. You got to think about the fact that he needs to keep his eyes open, which is always a challenge with these guys. And this is wild water, right? So, I'm under the water, it's all moving, he's kind of moving. You got to think about how the light's going to fall. If he would have rolled in the opposite direction, he would have been backlit. So he kind of rolled this way, but by whatever ambient light's coming in, it's kind of coming through. And then you want to keep your shutter speed relatively fast as well. So, and I love shots like this. And then the last shot is really sort of work on an element of movement, whereby, again, he's coming down this wild water park. The first photo was all frozen action. This one is kind of moving with a slower shutter speed and panning him through. And his success rate goes down quite quickly because everything needs to be kind of at the same speed. Probably, I don't know what I was, probably 1/60th of a second. He's coming through at fast speed. You got to preempt it, and then kind of get a photograph. And really nice guy. He then went on to Rio for the Olympics because that's what he was training for, and he came home with a gold medal. I was kind of proud as well. So well done. Then you get a brief whereby you just want one photograph. And this is a shoot I did in Oman in the middle of June, which is not the time of the year to go and do this kind of stuff. So the brief is like this. You get a PDF, a photo, a sample photo which the agency came up with, and you get a bit of scenario with two people in Oman, and then there's a bit of detail here. And often that's all you get. In this case, we were lucky. We found someone who can find the location for us. And then you spend half a day or a whole day trying to create a photo that looks very similar to this. This is heavily retouched. This has gone through the agency, spent hours on it. But in principle, the way the photograph is taken is as is. The only thing they've added is the sky, because in the middle of June there's no clouds, as we know. But the guy coming down on the upside, I made him a little bit bigger. But she was there as it was, as an assistant here with a bit of studio light. And this is the one I kind of chose. And it's different. Sometimes you get hired to shoot a series of photos, and sometimes, we spoke about it earlier, you get hired to do just one photo. And obviously you got to make sure that you get it. And then you arrive at Muscat Airport, and then there's lots of branding all over, so they've used it all over. It's shot for Mantel. Then I get to do photographs for Lululemon, which is a big client of mine. They do a yoga brand. And I've been photographing their ambassadors now since they've launched here 4 years ago. And I just love the brand. It's very natural light, non-complicated. I've done photo shoots for them. I'm trying to bring in a bit of studio lights, and then they always send me back saying, no studio lights. It needs to look as organic and as raw as possible. Any questions so far? Please? Yeah. Sorry, there's a microphone coming. Karaoke.
The one with the kayak, the third picture which you took underwater.
Yeah.
Any form of artificial lighting in that?
No.
All natural.
It's all natural lighting, yeah. So the question is the underwater camera, this one. Go back up a little. This is all natural light. So I shot this pretty much close to the middle of the day, knowing that there'll be most of the light coming through. If you shoot it too late, probably it's going to get really dark underwater. So with the Aquatech, the housing, I usually can use strobes. I just don't have them, so I generally just use natural light. So, any other questions?
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about the Canon EOS R. which is the new mirrorless camera and camera brought out, I think, a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago. I've had the pleasure of picking one up in the office 2 weeks ago. So I have a play at it. You're going to do a talk soon, so please use that one of your shoots. So I was just talking about some of the Lululemon photography I've done over the years. So I've been doing a lot of work for them with different ambassadors. I thought it would be a perfect shoot to bring it along and sort of just to test it. So all the photographs I've got through here, we're still going through selection with the client. I shot both RAW and JPEGs. So all the images you're seeing here is just the high-res JPEGs coming out of it. So I've run it through Lightroom a little bit, but I've not made any changes of it. So I'm just going to go through the photographs and then kind of give a general recap about my experience shooting it. So I did a photograph with one of the ambassadors, Alison. She's a yoga/movement ambassador. And generally how these things would work, we shoot 4 ambassadors in one day, so you get 2-hour slot, and then you just kind of run around the country trying to get as many photographs as you can kind of in that short period of time. The brand is not very concerned about having logos all over the place, which is perfect. I love that. Otherwise, you just have to worry about, kind of all the little details. And it's just a matter of going out, and I've worked with her before. This is the second time I'm photographing her, and she's just a real nice pleasure to work with. And when I said all of these photos are just kind of just the JPEGs coming out of the Canon EOS R. So I ran a little bit through Lightroom, but the colors and the crispness is as it comes out of the camera. I love energy and joy on set. I think it's always important, and I've said it many times, to connect with who you're working with, allowing a bit of space to laugh. And some characters are easier than others, but after a while, at the end of the day, I want them to look good, and if they feel that, then it kind of always works. I think that's the last photograph in that range. So I said, I basically picked up the camera. It doesn't come with a manual when you pick it up in the office. Here's the bag, here's a bunch of lenses, and help yourself. And one of the many things I've loved about the mirrorless, and I think it's the key thing is, in conclusion, the quality of the images I was very, very happy with. I was very happy with how the colors have come out. I was very happy with how the sharpness have come out. And then that is what counts, right? The quality image is what is the end product. I love the fact that it has the full screen focus. If you worked with the 1DX, they say, well, we've got 52 autofocus points. Yeah, but they're always in the middle, right? And then you try to do the framing somewhere else, it's always, you've got to reposition. So the nice thing about a mirrorless, it comes with a screen on the back, and then you can kind of just press where you want to have the focus, which is super, super easy. What I really like about the camera, and I've not seen it in any of the other Canon products. When you're taking photographs in a normal DSLR, you take a photograph, it goes black, and then it comes back up, and you're kind of working through your shots. With the mirrorless, you take a photograph, and in the split you let go, it kind of shows on the screen the photo you've just taken, and you go to the next one. So I think, and that for me, I love that, because you kind of, especially when I shoot movement, I just shoot lots and lots of photos. I just keep on shooting, and then I can just see people moving, hand in front of the face, how the facial expressions is working, how the background is working, and I really love, because that gives a real true reflection of the photographs you're taking, either from a composition or from a exposure point of view. And then, I love the size as well. So these are all the JPEGs. I think when I'm going to go back to the client, I'm going to start working on the RAW files, and I think that's 30 megapixels, I think, if I'm not wrong. One of the challenges I've personally faced, obviously it's good and bad, right? Not that there's a lot of bad in the mirrorless, but I just want to share it from an experience point of view. So I've come from the Canon 1DX, which is kind of the workhorse, right? 14 frames a second, you press and hold, and the thing just takes photos forever. With this one, there's a lot less frames per second. That's something I needed to get used to. So when you're kind of shooting movement, I'm not getting as many photographs as I kind of imagined. Obviously, it has to do with the file size are bigger, because you're shooting 30 megapixels versus below 20. And because the file size is bigger, the buffering is also a little bit slower, potentially. So I'm not used to waiting on my 1DX. I can just keep on taking photos, and then the internal memory is super fast. With this one, I had 1 or 2 moments whereby, I just got to wait for the camera to kind of download the focus. And then, like with every new camera, it comes with a new RAW type. So I have to now upgrade my software. We all know that, right? And then once you upgrade your software, the laptop says, you can't upload that software yet because your laptop is too old. And before you know it, you're going to change the whole infrastructure. But I think that's just a matter of moving forward. But overall, I think this image and all the other images show, it's the end image that works. And I think the quality I was super, super happy with. So this is another commercial shoot I've done, which has some photographs in it. Same thing as the Oman shoot. You get called, they just want one photograph. And this was done for Under Armour. They're doing this new launch campaign. They want to do some big billboards. And I've got a very short video which kind of shows the scale and the complexity of what happens behind the scenes on a commercial shoot whereby it's just me and one athlete and then another 10, 15 people also trying to help create a really nice photograph. Hi guys, my name is Wouter Kingma. We're here in Dubai at the Fairmont Hotel in the Palm. Great location. Got the next couple of hours, we're going to shoot the next campaign for Under Armour. They're launching in the Middle East.
Kick the dust out your back, don't look back. Give all the dollars you know a fake heart attack. 'Cause you were made for this. You can feel it inside your bones. You were made for this. And it's time you let the world know who you are, what you know. It's happening right now. So run, run, it's a new day. Run, run, it's time to embrace. Breathe, breathe, in and out.
Client's happy, athlete was amazing. I always love working with athletes. They're professional, they just look muscular, they're super strong, always works well in imagery. So what you see, this is the end result. Is it my best photograph? I don't know. I can question. You probably wouldn't. I don't know if it lives on my website, yes or no. And that's often in nature with commercial photography is you get to do what the client wants. And you can see there is a client, there's an agency, and there's a whole bunch of other creative people trying to sell and tell what's happening. So how I normally would address this, I kind of knew this had to be the photograph. That was the campaign, right? A push-up holder, whatever they call it. We couldn't do anything else, so we couldn't get creative to do other stuff. So this is the end photograph they wanted. It had to be either a skyline or a sports environment, and it had to be Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So there's another photograph that comes after this with another athlete. And what you often find with commercial shoots is I shoot on the camera, often on a tripod, so you kind of frame it. It's all linked to a big screen, and then the big screen is where everyone just gets together and everyone gives their feedback, right? And often that's where you go from a really cool photograph to a less interesting, more boring photograph, because that's just the nature of, we need to change this, we need to remove that, we need to do this, and then it's starting to look very polished. And that's just the nature of what happens on shoots like this. But it's fun though, because everyone's just looking at you. You've got 7, 15 people, and then it's all going to come together at the right time. We had lots of stuff here that all had to be removed, and we had to clean this up, and we had to do that. And in Photoshop, I did add the sky, though. It wasn't a very cloudy day when we were shooting it. But it's what the client wanted, so I think that's also what commercial photography is about. I did a second shoot with Eva Clark, a well-known athlete in Abu Dhabi. Location had to be Abu Dhabi, so we shot inside Sports Stadium. We kind of went in, very similar setup, camera, fed it to a big screen, everyone gathers around, and then collectively we're making feedback on how we can get the best photograph ever. There's assistants running around, setting up lights, and doing a whole bunch of things, and obviously the logo is important, putting the shirt, this and that, but and we added some nice dramatic clouds. Any questions so far? So the question is, how's the conversation happen before a shoot like this? Sometimes it depends, but generally there'll be a pre-production meeting. So you'll be called into the agency, and the agency has put a lot of time and effort in putting the briefing document together. So often they would have sample photos of this is what we want and this is what we don't want, and kind of give a look and feel. So there's kind of strong guidelines on how they want it. Sports brands would generally have a 80-page document about how to shoot the brand, yes or no kind of thing. So it's very, you've got to go through all of that. And then, like the earlier shot with the lady in the water in the waterfall. So they gave me a sample shot, and then you kind of had to get something that mirrors it as much as possible. I think what you often find with bigger shoots is with more people get involved, the production gets a lot bigger, the costs go up, therefore the risk goes up, and agency need to justify, is he the right person? Has he done it before, yes or no? And I think that's where earlier on when I talk about personal work, if you can show that you've done lots of work with athletes, or you have a whole body of work working for lots of sports brands, I think that's when people feel comfortable saying, he's done it so many times, he'll be fine doing this. Any other questions? Maybe we should leave the microphone here. There's lots of questions on this side. Please.
My question is basically related to this picture and the other picture in the desert.
Yeah.
Where two golf players were standing in the middle.
Yeah.
Those two famous golf players cost fortune to have them in the desert, while their face is not clear. Contrary to the model here, maybe who is not really that famous and very expensive.
Okay.
So why the client choose to have far distance shot for two famous major players without being seen, and here we have contrary to that. Do you arrange this? I mean, do you discuss this with the client, or you keep it to the client wish?
I think what you do, coming back to your golf photo, it's, and I think the same to the photo of Margaret Robbie and most of the other stuff I do, you shoot a number of options. So you shoot the far away shot whereby you kind of got the full arena, and then there'll be, in that series, there'll be 3-4 other shots whereby you come closer and you can kind of get a wider shot whereby the focus is more on the golf player and less about the background, and then you kind of shoot options. And if that needs to be there, you've got to bring in flashlights. Yeah, great. And sometimes you don't have time for flashlights. It's got to work so quick.
Do you take care of the logistics when you go to the shooting?
Sometimes I do, yeah. Depends on if it's very complex, I'll work together with a production house. So there'll be a producer who then looks after location permits, location hire, crew, sort of catering, all that kind of stuff. So I prefer to work with a producer because then I know all the logistics is taken care of, and then I can just focus on kind of getting the shot kind of thing. So.
Thank you.
Good. So this is Eva Clark. So interesting thing is, so when I was photographing her, she did a Red Bull shoot with another photographer earlier, and then this is kind of her shot, and then so I never get to do the photographs I really enjoy that really resembles what I do as a sport. And what she does, she's got 12 Guinness Book World Record holders on 24-hour push-ups, 24-hour pull-ups, 12-hour this. So she's a real kind of powerhouse. She said, fine, why don't we spend a bit of time together? I'll just come and photograph some of your training sessions, and we kind of do personal work. So we spent a bit of time in the gym, and she's all tattooed up, and we shot some portfolio work that works for her. The interesting thing was, I kind of knew she had a fear of heights. And I said, Eva, you've got a fear of heights, right? I've got a nice surprise for you tomorrow. I've booked 2 tickets to go to Skydive Dubai. I thought I'll surprise her, right? I was doing a film project with her at the same time. She shared a bit of inside information, and he said, I've booked 2 tickets for Skydive Dubai. She said, no. I've got a fear of heights. No chance I'm going to jump out of a plane. I said, yeah, of course, we're fine. And we went back and forth, and she was joking and this and that. And she said, fine, I'll jump out of the plane under one condition. We run from Yas Marina Circuit, where we were at that time when I announced it. We're going to run from Yas Marina Circuit to Skydive Dubai. So we're going to run from Abu Dhabi to Dubai. And then I had to come. That was part of the deal. So if you want me to jump out of a plane, that means we got to run together to Dubai. And I thought, hell, that's going to be a long run. And I'm a long-distance runner, so I kind of felt relatively comfortable. And I said, fine, if that's the deal, we do it on the spot. And that's what we did. So 2 years ago, come National Day, we ran. That's the thing you do with athletes, right? I think that's where you kind of get to gel with the people you work with. We ran unplanned, unsupported, unrouted, on everything, leaving Skydive Dubai, and 18 hours later we rocked up at Skydive. It's one of the best things I've done, I think. We're still alive, yeah. It's a bit sore, but that's what happens when you get to hang around with really kind of cool and interesting people. Then we went to registration. After 18 hours of running, Eva went through quite quickly. They asked, gentlemen, can you come and stand on a scale? I got on a scale. And then the conclusion was, everyone has jumped from a plane before. There's a maximum kilo of 100 kilos. I was too heavy at the end. So I never got to jump out of a plane. Only she did. So, and then it was about her overcoming a fear of heights. And now she's done, I think, 20 jumps afterwards. So she's totally got a new hobby. So that a bit on photography and film. There's a question in the back. I think there's a microphone on the way. I'm going to talk a few minutes about print, and then I've got some recap stuff to do. So if there's any questions about photography, film, there's one in the back.
Yeah, I just have a question with the commercial work. Does the client comes to you by the budget or the agency?
Commercial work or personal work? Commercial work.
Commercial work.
Commercial work, yeah. So budgets, yeah, there's always an interesting one, right? Often the conversation starts, this is what we need, that's the skill of the production, tell us how much it's going to cost. So I then work together with a producer, say, well, these are my fees, back to the client, and then the client says, oh, that's too much. And then you got to go back and forth a little bit about what works. So if we do less shots, it might be a shorter period of time. If they really want to do the shots, then it's a little bit of a dance. And there's always a little bit of a margin, I think. But at the same time, I think it's a big question about budgets and money and do you hold on to your fees and do you don't? You got to operate in a field where you feel comfortable. And I've lost jobs for sure, saying, let's say the budget is we proposed the cost of 80, and they said, well, the budget is only 40. So, well, that's not like 10% more or less. That's like half the budget. And then sometimes you got to be willing to accept it and go for less, and sometimes you got to step away saying, no, sorry, but that's considering the amount of work it's going to be and the complexity it's all coming together. It's not going to work out. So, and I don't think you would find a photographer who would deliver that level of quality of work for that budget. So I think that's it's the constant challenges. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When did you move from one-man show into a production and team?
So how has the business grown? So I've been doing my own thing for the last 12 years. I've picked up, so I do three things. I do photography, film production, and books. And books is something I've always done starting from year 2, producing coffee table books. So I've done 12 books about photography on different topics. So there's always a team effort, right? Because you've got designers, printers, calligraphy, translators, copy editors, and things like that. And then slowly over time, you kind of work grows into bigger sets. And when that transition period was there, I don't know, probably 6, 7, 8 years in, I think the productions got a lot bigger. And often that's just an introduction by someone who just, oh, we love what you've done. I've done it many times before. I feel comfortable with it, and kind of reproducing it on a commission based, and then kind of costed and putting a team together that way. So it takes time. Any other questions? Good. So let's talk a little bit about print. This is a slide I put up years ago about print, and I think I love print, right? And I'm going to talk about different examples how print has kind of added to my business. And I think we all live in a digital age. We all live in an iPhone age. We all live in digital cameras. So much of our stuff lives on hard drives. And I think at the moment it ends up on a hard drive, it never sees a day of light. And I think it's such a shame of so much beautiful photos we take, either personal or work. There's a real space whereby print really kind of tells a story. And I use photography a lot in my business. So these are a couple of things I've put up. whereby photography for me, so printing is at times a revenue stream. So I get to do commission jobs and then do prints. And then I can charge for photo exhibitions. So I put photo exhibitions together. That's all kind of commissioned work. I have a printed portfolio, which I've got here, which I'll never be able to show. So I have it printed home. So I've got the Canon Pro 1000, which is the bigger size. It prints as an A2. And then I've got the 8400, which prints big rolls of film this size. And what I love about my printed portfolio, it's something not many people do anymore. Everyone goes to a client meeting and then they walk up with the laptop, the thing opens up, and then we're all gone digital again. So many times I've gone to client meetings, I'm not going to go through all of them, it just gives an idea, whereby I can just put this thing on a table. So first of all, we need to clear the table of everything else. You kind of put it down there, and then the client at his own pace, I'm just going to pull one out. Oh, look at that. So the client at his own pace can then go through, I think there's like 25 prints in here. Beautiful portfolio work. And the nice thing about it, they can do it at their own pace. So I don't touch it. I don't tell them the speed they go at. So for me, it's really interesting to learn what photographs they like. And it's easy, if there's something that they really like, I just give it to them and then do a new print at home. I love printing on kind of textured paper. So I'm not personally not a big fan of photographic paper, but it's just a personal preference. And then there's just lots of photographs we've all seen in this presentation here that allows me then to kind of tell stories about the work I do and kind of really interact with clients. So printing this kind of content has been something that works really well. It's so easy to do a print and then give it back to clients. I've done prints whereby I've done really cool photo shoots, and then I've got some photographs of the client, or there's some prints the client really like. I can just print it back in the office and get it dropped off a few days later. So when it comes to single photographs, I think that's something that works really well. Then this is A2, yeah. Then I do, there's a website called printonline.me. So the guys are going to go tomorrow. They're kind of the production behind this. So I haven't brought it with me, but we're going to have a look at it tomorrow. So you can print beautiful, big 30 by 30 centimeter one-on-one printed books. That's all on photographic paper. So again, it's beautiful portfolio work which you can present to clients. And it's something you can leave behind as well. So if you feel there's a general interest, the book might cost 300-400 dirhams if you print it. It's costly, but it's not the end of the world if that's going to give some business. And it's something you can leave behind. Those who do weddings and other kind of things, it's a beautiful platform to produce work for clients. And then you can charge for it. So I can shoot your wedding, I can photograph it, and I can put a book together, and the book is going to cost, it's kind of so much. So it's a beautiful way to do photo exhibitions. I've got some photos coming up shortly. And I've used printing for stickers, and I've used printing for promotional posters. And I've got some photos. It'll be easier to go through that. So everyone's seen the prints earlier, right? When we came in, all those little inspirational quotes. I don't want to get too personal, but this is my bathroom wall. This is what I look at every morning. I have a 3 by 3 meter wall. We're full of quotes. And I can do that because I've got an in-house printer. So I've just printed, it's like wallpaper. So I've printed on adhesive vinyl, 60 centimeters wide. And then I had a retouching artist who just put lots and lots of in it. And then just strips and strips of inspirational quotes. And this is something I've collected over the years on the internet. And it's just a really nice way of putting some inspiration on the wall. So again, that same adhesive vinyl, the stickled paper. This is an art project I did. I was in Art Dubai a couple of years ago. And there was this lady who wanted to do this installation with, I think, 40 of these empty, there's about this size, plastic pops. And they want to do an exhibition with it. So she gave me one. And so everyone can do the interpretation as they want. And I thought, so I sat on it for a long time. So what I'm going to do with an empty white kind of teddy bear. And then I thought, actually, if it's all related to Dubai, let's put little stickers on it. So what I did, I just printed a selection of photographs. It was all related to Dubai. So falconry, camels, desert, Burj Khalifa, all that kind of thing. Cut it all out. And then I stickered it all up. I love Dubai and things like that. There's a Sheikh Mohammed photo on there as well. And I kind of dressed them up with all stickers. Kind of fun stuff you can do, but you kind of do in-house printing And I went on into a big art installation down in XVA Gallery in Bastakia. This is some of my exhibition work I've done, photo exhibitions. Again, you know, it's nice when you can print your own. Persons earlier was saying, you know, when you send it off to the printer, it doesn't come exactly the way you want it. It's green or it's blue or it's all that kind of stuff. You know, when you do in-house printing, you print one, and you can kind of make corrections where you need to. So I think it's a really nice added value of having an in-house printer to deliver quality work. So this is some of my earlier aerial series, which I did some prints, limited edition ones. This is my Footsteps of Tessinger expedition, had some prints on sale there. And this is a big art gallery space which I rented out and did a photo exhibition selling some of my prints. So it, you know, there's a revenue stream there trying to make a bit of additional cash or photographs you've taken anyway. And this is something I've done for a number of years, which is kind of a promotional poster. This is probably quite a few years old. 2013, so it's 4 years old, which is basically very simple. 90 GSM paper, so it's kind of like a normal A4 sheet paper you get in a printer. So it doesn't cost much. I put a bit of artwork together of photographs, and then you can just print it on demand. And what I did is, that's probably not the best example, but I personalized them as well. So if I know I have 40 clients I want to go and do work for, which is often creative agencies, I'll find out who the right person at the creative agency is who deals with photographers. And I said, and his name is, I don't know, Ibrahim. I said, dear Ibrahim, and then I kind of do a personal message whereby I think I would want to come and work for their agency because we share similar clients or similar bodies of work. So, you know, having an in-house printer kind of allows to play that way. So print on your own. Something we're going to do tomorrow. I'm just going to recap. I know I spoke a bit about before the break, but those who've not taken a photograph of this yet. So the opportunity for you guys tomorrow is to go and visit a production studio and see the guys at work. So they're going to do book printing, they've got large format printing, and they've just got a whole bunch of different things you can do with printers, which I think is a really nice opportunity just to sort of see how it works. If it works for you commercially, yes or no, I think, you know, it's just a bonus. Everyone's going to get 2 prints. If I'm not mistaken, it's going to be an A3 size print. So you need to email them across. Email, ideally something that allows for an A3 size print at 300 dpi. So the better the quality, the better the print, I think. And if you email it all in advance, then it will be ready for you guys to pick it up. It's going to be here, so that's your Google Maps kind of search thing. And hopefully you've all registered with the guys at the counter. That's kind of, any questions on printing before I move into kind of recap? Printing still rocks. Yeah?
What is the color portfolio you use?
The color portfolio, the color profile. He's got 2 now. I'm still on RGB, which works for these printers. Often when you start doing offset printing, when it's the books, you've got to convert to CMYK, and then it gets a bit more complicated, because they work with additional colors. So RGB is generally my profile, and then yeah, I'm just going to print it out from there through Photoshop. And I got all plugins, so it's quite easy to do.
Do you use the color range while you print, or you keep the same color range? I mean, from 16-bit to 8-bit, or you do all this technical?
Yeah, so good question. So I photograph everything in RAW. I always photograph everything in RAW. And then when I export to something I know I'm going to print, I'll export it to a TIFF file. And then that will be on a 16-bit, kind of the biggest possible file you can get. That's going to be my image to start with. And then I run it through Photoshop, and then, you know, spend how much time I want to spend on it. So, and then 350 or 300 dpi, that kind of gives you the best quality print export. Yeah. Any other print questions? If you got very technical questions on printing, there will be guys tomorrow who can even got more knowledge about printing than I do. So I've got, I think, 2 or 3 slides to wrap it up. So I've finished resources. There's a couple of things I want to share with you. Hopefully I've given you lots of information. Hopefully it was all very useful. There's a blog I've been running for, I don't know, 5, 6 years. And one of the last posts I've put up on there is a very personal blog post, no photos, just text, about the 10 things I've learned in the last 12 years of being self-employed. So anyone, I was a question earlier, is, how do I start doing this, and how do I do my own business, and what do I do? I think when you go to my blog, and I think it's the 10 things I've learned in the last dozen years being self-employed, it's a beautiful summary of how someone could start doing what I do today. And don't forget, I was in your seat 12, 13, 14 years ago, looking at the screen thinking, that's amazing, that's what I want to be doing. And then 12 years later, you're kind of standing here telling the story. So I think that journey, that summary, is what that blog post is about. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff on there. Obviously, HIPAA, we're all here, which I think is a great resource for talks and content. There's something called Go Photo Plus, which I hope most of you know. They do beautiful lectures and training, and every year they bring a lot of international guys down. There's a website called Masterclass, which is a little bit less known, but they sell, I guess, what is it, an online video tutorial about a range of topics, but also about photography and creative writing and things like that. But I've got a couple of really good photographers who have probably altogether about 3-4 hours of storytelling about their journey and things like that, which I can really strongly recommend. You've got something called Creative Live, which hopefully you guys know, which is also an online learning tool with lots and lots of content, mostly photography related. So if you want to have any topic, it's there. Weddings, art, retouching, food, they've all got topics. And I personally love listening to podcasts. You know, we all spend a lot of hours in the car being stuck. Podcast, for me, is a great resource just to have a really interesting conversation with someone in the car, which I can definitely recommend. So just to recap, there's a couple of things I wanted to put in a summary. We've all spoken through it, so there's not a surprise what's up here. I think passion rocks. And when you look at my journey, I've always done a lot of sports, adventure sports, action kind of based. It always comes because it's something I personally love, it's something I've personally done, and it's the easiest way for me to sort of enter into that market. So I think anyone who wants to transition and do a full-time photography career, do it in a field that you feel most comfortable with and where you're really, really excited about. You know, that's the way you're going to deliver your best work. That's where you have the best contacts. And that's probably where you want to do most of your work with anyway. And I always live by what you talk about is what you get. So if your body of work, if your portfolio is all the stuff you want to be doing, that's the only thing you've got to be photographing. Personal work, the power of personal work, it allows you to explore, it allows you to try new things, it allows you to build a portfolio, which it again, on the longer term, opens up doors and has lots to offer. Only excellence. And I think with some of the earlier trails I spoke about all the opportunities, I strongly believe that if you only do amazing work, it leads to unexpected great opportunities. And I think you get to do helicopter work, get to fly around the world doing all kind of stuff. There's always been a trail somewhere along the line whereby I had a choice to do average, mediocre stuff, or I had the opportunity to do something amazing. And I think doing the amazing stuff always leads to new opportunities. Stay hungry. I think that's where the learning comes in. That's where the last slide comes in. We've got to keep on learning. I learn every day. And I kind of potentially got very comfortable in my photography setting, with the work I do and the clients I have. But then I added more film work to the mix, which then technically is a whole different ball game. But it's kind of really allowed me to keep on developing as a person. And I think staying hungry in a very competitive environment is super important. And then the last one is trust the process. Is anyone who wants to go and do what they love, the phone rings at the right time, the people you meet at the right time, there's a bit of karma in there. And it's possibly hard to imagine when you kind of go into something new, but anyone who's been in the business for a long period of time will probably confirm that once you're in the field of what you're doing, you're doing what you're passionate about, you're only delivering great work, then the process will allow you to kind of get more opportunities to do that. So, so what you saw earlier was I've done a lot of behind the scenes videos. So I want to close it off with one short 60-second recap. And it lives on my website. It's called a brand wheel. And if anyone asks me, so what it is that you do, I often just show them that 60-second summary because this is pretty much what 12 years of being self-employed fun looks like. I'm going to do something what I call raw.
One of these days, you and me, we're gonna sail across the deep blue sea. We're gonna sail across the ocean, you and me. Oh, one of these nights, honey, you and I, we're gonna float up to heaven in the deep blue sky. We're gonna look down on creation, you and I. So if you wanna make it rain, you make it pour.
You want me to look at the camera or someone look at me?
One of these days, the two of us, we're gonna go downtown, we're gonna take a bus, we're gonna go downtown together, the two of us. Oh, one of these nights, honey, you and I, we're gonna be the ones that float on by.
Quite remarkable. You can, there you go.
So I think the last slide is before I'm going to say thank you, I just want to see if there's any questions you want to ask from the audience. You've got a microphone still.
I would like to
Hello.
Ask you a
Hi,
final
Wouter.
question.
My name is
Do
Sagar.
you think if you were somewhere else, not in Dubai, you would go to the same time?
So the question is, if I would have not lived in Dubai, where would my photography career be? Right?
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. So that's a very good question. And I think Dubai is generally a land of opportunity, right? We've all grown and expanded, and I think when I look at all my friends around me, because I've been here 16 years, we've all kind of been on an accelerator, either in terms of career, personal, etc. And I think it's definitely been the case for me. So, you know, if I answer it very personally, I think Dubai is definitely a place whereby you can grow a lot faster. Dubai is a place whereby you get a lot more opportunities than you would get somewhere else in the world. And I've been knocking on doors, trying to get into the European market. I said, well, I'd love to work in the Middle East in the winter, and when it gets too hot, I just go and work in the summer in Europe. That'll be the perfect mix, right? 50-50, 6 months, 6 months. But the European market is very saturated, and what I found, everyone is very niche. So in Europe, you are a interior photographer with a certain style. And no one's going to call you to go and do a helicopter project, or no one's going to do a book about falcons, or whatever it is. So Dubai is definitely allowed for a steeper growth development, and Dubai has allowed to create a really nice wide body of work. I think it's a positive thing. I think it's a positive thing to have opportunities to grow and be surrounded with people whereby you get a lot more opportunities early in your career than you would get in Europe. In Europe, the hierarchy is a lot longer, so there's always going to be a more senior person in that niche kind of field of photography. Yeah?
My question is it positive or negative for as a business?
Okay.
Industry itself, for the industry.
I think for the photographer, when I look at me personally, I think I'm happy I started my career in Dubai and not in Europe. It's not easy, but it's not going to be easy anywhere in the world, right? We just talked about earlier about the hustle, about getting business and getting your foot into the door, and agencies whereby you think, oh, I've got a great network of people, you send a newsletter out, and then you see that 20% of your clients have left. You've got to start all over again, trying to get your foot into the door. So it's not necessarily always an easy place, but I think it's a place whereby there's a lot of opportunity, and I think as anyone who wants to grow into the creative field, you know, I think Dubai is a great place to do that. Yeah. Any other questions? I saw someone in the back. Yep.
I have two questions.
Two.
Yeah. The first question is, as a technical, which lenses you prefer for landscape wide and portrait? And my second question is, what things keeps you motivated to take a different kinds of pictures?
Good question.
Thanks.
Yep. So first question, what's my preferred landscape lens? And portrait. Now, it's two different lenses. So I think from a landscape, I think it's generally a wide lens, right? So I would go for a 16-35. Landscape is wide, right? Unless you're kind of cropping in a detail, get nice foreground layers. And we were up in Liwa a couple of weeks ago for a family trip. You know, I bought a long lens and a wide lens, and the wide lens kind of works because you can get the foreground, beautiful sand dunes, and then you can tell a story. So 16-35 would be my preference for landscape. When it comes to portrait, it would be either a 50 or 85 prime lens, 1.2. And then I'd normally shoot at f2, which is 50 is probably too wide, so 85 would be better. And then it's a beautiful way of getting a nice, crisp focus on the eyes, and everything else just perfectly blows away. I think so. An 85 1.2 lens. And then, what was the second question again? Sorry.
Yeah, what things you inspire?
What keeps me inspired? Travel. I think travel, going to places, surround yourself with really inspiring people. You know, you often get stuck in your little world, and, you know, I've got a family, and there's all family and diaper stuff, and to sort of step outside and hang out where other creative young people are, and could be art gallery spaces, could be, you know, workshops like this, could be Golf Photo Plus content. And then one other thing I have, and I was talking about earlier, and I want to share with you because I think everyone should do that, is on my laptop I have a folder called Creative by Others. So every time I see something really nice, so it could be a photograph, it could be an ad, it could be a piece of art, or it could be a pattern, or whatever it is, a color mix, I'll screen grab it or pull it off and I put it into that folder. And once in a while, when you kind of feel a bit lost, oh, I don't know what to do, and I'm looking for an idea for a personal project, the place I would always start looking would be in that folder called Created by Others. So everything in there, none of that is mine. Everyone is that collectively from all around the world. Websites I follow, blogs, Instagram pages. There's so much beautiful content out there. And then I'll look at it and I'll get a bit of inspiration from it. And I'm not going to look at it saying, well, I want exactly the same photo and kind of copy paste and look at the f-stop and the aperture, and I think that's kind of irrelevant. I think you kind of got to look at, I love that photo, what does it resemble? There's a certain storytelling, there's a certain color pattern, there's a certain way the person looks or the composition, and then based on that you start playing, and then you got to do yourself. So I think it's just staying hungry, what I said earlier. I think that staying alive bit it's not always easy. You know, I think when I look at it now, Q4 is always the busiest time of the year, right? That's, you know, come September all the way through to next week. It's just flat out, and then you just gotta hammer work through, and then when it gets a bit quiet is when you're going to do some fun stuff. Any other questions? One final one? No? Then I'm going to thank you guys very much for your attention, and then good luck in your careers.
Thank you very much. And before we end up, we need your help to vote for the People's Choice winner. The HIPA has
what am I supposed to do?
It's Instagram competition, monthly Instagram competition last month, and the theme was night photography. So tonight we are going to present the 5 nominated photographs at the beginning, and this is just for you to review the photographs, the nominated photographs, and then after we present, this presentation, everyone should vote for one photo. All right. So after you review the 5 photographs, we will present the photographs again, and then you need to choose only one photograph. All right. All right. Yeah. So photograph number 1. How many votes? Raise up your hands, please. So we have 4 votes. Photo number 2. 1, 2, 3. Any more votes? 4. So 4 votes. Third photograph. Oh, we have so many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. What was the last number? Yeah. Yeah. 30. So can you add one more? 31? 31. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You voted already. Yes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. Yes, regarding tomorrow, you still have the chance to register for the session for tomorrow. It's exclusively for those who participated in tonight's lecture. And please do not forget to register your name in the reception desk, and we will have the group photograph outside. Thank you very much.